I never thought 4 words could destroy a marriage, but they did. I walked in one night, saw her, and everything changed. It wasn't the late nights, the secrets, or even the lies. It was the way she looked at me, like I was a stranger in my own life. That night, I realized the truth. She had moved on. While I stayed, loved, fought, she had already left. The man in the mirror? Just a fool, clinging to memories that no longer mattered. Now all that's left is revenge. And I'm ready. 4 simple words changed my marriage and my life, and they aren't the words you might expect. Not, "we need to talk," or "I've met someone," or "we're having issues," or even, "you're not enough." Actually, that last one has 5 words, but who's counting? It was something much stranger and simpler than that. One Tuesday night, after finishing a legal show on cable, I walked into our bedroom to get ready for a shower. I watch a lot of crime and lawyer shows, probably too many. I should get enough of that at my job as an assistant state attorney in Duval County, which is similar to the district attorney's office up north. We are the ones who handle cases against those who break the law. Still, I enjoy those kinds of shows even after 10 years in my job. Debbie was in bed, leaning back on a crumpled pillow, looking through a travel magazine. She usually brought home a lot of student papers to grade from the University of North Florida, where she teaches business. Those papers usually took her a couple of hours to finish, but that night she was just relaxing. And it was already 11 p.m. I loved watching her. Even after 17 years of marriage, I still enjoyed looking at her. A tall blonde with a stylish cut, she looked much younger than her actual age of 39. The robe she wore was casual, but it still showed off her graceful shape. I thought about talking to her, but I decided against it. She usually liked me to take my evening shower and brush my teeth before we connected more deeply, and she often felt too tired during the week to think about anything else. I glanced down at myself. I was 5'9" and Debbie was 5'10". While she stayed fit from regular workouts, I had developed a bit of a belly, not doing much exercise aside from occasional rounds of golf when office politics required it. I went into the bathroom, changed out of my clothes, and looked at myself in the full-length mirror. My hair was thinning, and I noticed a balding spot at the back of my head. Then I looked at my middle. It was pale and not as fit as I wanted. No wonder Debbie preferred the lights to be low during our rare moments of closeness. I looked like a typical middle-aged attorney, a reality I used to find amusing in others. I was only 41, not 61. At that moment, I decided that I couldn't keep telling myself I didn't have time for the gym, and I had teased Debbie about being a bit vain. If I were her, I wouldn't be eager to be around me either. After my shower, I felt refreshed. Instead of my usual underwear and t-shirt, I wrapped a towel around my waist and found a set of pajamas in my drawer by the bed. I thought I saw Debbie glance at me with a small smile, but maybe I was just imagining it. After covering my pot, I climbed into bed beside her. I leaned over to say hello and tried to give her a kiss, but she turned her head a bit. So, I kissed her cheek gently. She smiled, but it seemed a little distracted. "Are the kids asleep?" I asked. Bill Jr. was 14 and Kelly was 16. I had left Bill looking at skateboarding websites, but I knew he might be curious about other things common for his age. I had put tracking programs on the computers. I trusted them, but after working in law, I knew it was important to pay attention to what they were doing. I suspected Kelly was quietly talking to one of her friends as she seemed to whisper and move away in the den. She had many friends, just like her mom. "No, but they know the rules. I'm sure they'll be in bed soon. By the way, those pictures you showed were amazing. Where was that beach with the tiki huts by the water?" "Oh." She looked at me, surprised that I noticed her reading. She held up the magazine Travel, opened to an article called "The Best Beaches You've Never Heard Of." It featured a beach on an island I didn't recognize and couldn't pronounce. "Wow, that looks stunning. Would you like to go there this summer when school is out? I know you weren't planning to teach." She looked at me surprised. "That's sweet, Bill, but I wanted to talk to you. I was thinking about teaching this summer. Larry Carter usually handles the summer classes, but he's away with his wife and they need someone to take over." "When did you decide this? I hadn't heard anything." She looked into my eyes and then away, her expression hard to understand. About a month ago. I meant to tell you, but I kept forgetting. Sorry, I didn't think we had any solid plans. You are always busy with work. We haven't traveled somewhere nice in a long time. I know, but... She lowered the magazine to her side and said, I'm sorry, Bill. I already told them I would take the summer class. But we visited so many amazing places together. I promise next summer I'll find time for a nice trip. I've always been quick to catch on at work, but it took me a moment to process what she had just said after she finished patting my hand and picked the magazine back up. I repeated her words in my mind, trying to understand how I misunderstood my caring wife. When we were married? She looked back at me from the magazine, slightly confused, and asked, What did you say? I didn't realize it right away, but as her expression changed, I could feel my own expression turning toward worry. I quietly said, You mentioned we went to nice places when we were married. Is there something I don't know? Surprise and a bit of embarrassment showed on her face. What do you mean? You must have misunderstood. No, you said it clearly. When we were married. I thought we were married. Am I missing something? She shook her head and tried to look at me. I couldn't have said that. That doesn't sound right. No, it just surprised me. I know we're together, so where is that coming from? I mean, we've visited nice places since we've been together. That's what I meant to say. Oh. I thought about it and felt sure she was avoiding something. Since we were married, and when we were married, are too different to mistake. It slipped out without her realizing. In my job, we call these moments Freudian slips, times when someone's true thoughts come out. Even when we try to hide our feelings, our minds sometimes reveal what we want to keep secret. What was she really thinking? I noticed she was focused on my face, trying to read my thoughts, just as I was trying to understand hers. I had more practice at this, having done it for years. Then I felt a strange twist in my stomach. After 17 years of marriage and 2 years of dating before that, I was looking at her in a new way, like I might look at someone suspicious. I didn't like this feeling. I tried to laugh, but it came out as a dry sound. You're right, sweetie. Anyone can mix up their words. I do it sometimes, too. I admit you surprised me there. I was left wondering if we were really married. Is there a problem with our marriage license? Or did you quietly end our marriage? I tried to laugh again, but it turned into a dry cough. She looked deep into my eyes, trying to figure out if I was being honest. But after years in court, I had learned to keep a blank face. She wouldn't find any clues there. Then she did something unexpected. She took my hand gently and kissed it. It was a simple action, but I couldn't remember the last time she did something like that. Even during our more caring moments, things had always been intense. But this kiss felt different. I realized we hadn't been genuinely loving for a long time. If she had looked up at that moment, she might have seen the truth in my eyes, and everything could have changed for us. My eyes filled with tears as I suddenly recognized how far our marriage had fallen while I had been unaware. If she had looked into my eyes, she might have sensed something was wrong, and maybe a talk could have changed everything for us. But she didn't, and I quickly wiped away my tears with my other hand. She pressed her face against my palm and kissed it again. Without looking at me, she said, I'm sorry I said it that way, Bill. You know I love you. You're the only man in my life. I love you even more now than when we got married. You're the father of our children. It was just a slip of the tongue. Still, I couldn't shake my analytical side. I wondered why she wouldn't meet my eyes when she spoke about her feelings. My professional instincts kicked in, and I listened closely to her tone. I had heard many stories before, and now I found myself questioning her sincerity. A troubling thought kept coming back to me. When she mentioned when we were married, she used the past tense, implying we might not be as connected now as I hoped. She released my hand and set the magazine on the nightstand next to her side of the bed. She reached up and turned off the lamp, telling me, Turn the light off, honey. As I leaned over to switch off the light on my side, I caught a glimpse of her standing up and paused. When I turned my attention back to her, she was in her usual nightwear. She smiled, but it was different, and I could sense something unusual about her behavior tonight. Do you like it? She asked with a shy smile. The girls at school said it's really popular now. I paused for a moment and replied, I'm sure they did. Have you had any comments? She just stared at me, her expression frozen as my words hung in the air. Tears filled her eyes. "How can you say that, Bill? How can you say something so hurtful? When I tried to do this for you—" Frustration bubbled inside me, and I tried to keep it in. "And when were you going to share your new look with me? After your article? After the late news? Or were you just going to surprise me like you usually do? Oh, that's right, I forgot. You never do that. It feels like I have to work hard just to connect with you. When was the last time you surprised me?" I pretended to think. "Oh, right. Never. So what's different about tonight?" She crawled onto the bed to get my attention. "I don't want to fight, Bill. I want us to feel close again like we used to. I'm sorry for letting things slide. I've been busy with the kids, work, and friends that I've neglected what matters most. Us. I wanted to do something special. I wanted to feel that spark again, to feel close to you like before." And I wanted to believe her. I missed the early days of our marriage when showing love felt easy. I wanted to think she was eager to reconnect like before, but I struggled to believe that. I gently took her hand away, sensing the distance between us. She looked at me, confused, maybe thinking I was being unreasonable. "Babe, I just don't know how you're feeling right now. I feel like I don't know you as much anymore. If you had something special planned for tonight, things would feel different. You would have arranged for the kids. Instead, it seems like any other evening. Reading, watching TV, maybe cuddling, then checking on the kids and winding down for bed. That's how our evenings usually go." I studied her closely. She wasn't crying, but she looked surprised. "Everything changed a little while ago, when you started sharing your feelings." It had been a long time since she had done that. "I don't know what's happening, Deborah, but something is. Are you going to tell me?" She clasped her hands and tried to hold my gaze, but eventually looked down. "I don't know what you mean, Bill. I just wanted to feel close to you. You're overreacting to nothing. Are you seeing someone else?" That made her cry. She quickly wiped her tears, got off the bed, and put her robe back on, anger showing on her face. "You're being unreasonable. I'm trying to reconnect with you because we've grown apart, and you think I'm unfaithful? That thought shows how much trouble our marriage is in." I didn't respond. She had said enough. "I'm going to sleep on the couch. I can't be near you tonight. And tomorrow, please leave without saying a word or looking at me. Can you do that?" "I think I can." And she walked out. The next morning, I woke up early when the alarm went off at 5. I had already showered. I grabbed a suit from the closet, left without coffee, and headed out. I avoided turning on the light in the den, but I noticed a shape under a blanket on the big couch, with the large TV nearby. As I walked past the dark room, I tried to recall the last time we had shared a moment there, but I couldn't remember. At work, I quickly fell into my usual routine. I heard that a wealthy woman had pretended to be kidnapped to trick her husband out of a huge sum of money. I had to figure out what charges to file. A 75-year-old man was brought in tears after a coroner found a very high level of pain medication in his late wife, who had been battling cancer. He insisted he hadn't given her extra drugs to speed things up. Now, we had to decide whether to charge him. The case was sensitive, involving a police officer who had shot 3 people during a tense moment. The officer claimed he acted out of fear, but it seemed there was more to the story. It was a challenging situation that had quickly grown serious. The relationship between law enforcement and the prosecutors was complicated, and it was important for us to keep good spirits in the office. As one of the top assistants, I was tasked with making this tough decision. While handling my work, I couldn't shake off thoughts from the night before. I was too busy for a break, so I ordered lunch to be delivered. When Cheryl, my secretary of 5 years, brought in my food, I asked her to hold all calls unless it was urgent. She looked a little surprised, but quickly stepped back. I noticed her focused attitude. She always dressed well for work while keeping a warm personality. "Is there anything else you need, Mr. Maitland?" she asked. "Let's step out of our usual roles for a moment and talk," I suggested. Her face changed as she considered what I said. We had shared moments outside the office, and she knew I had always respected boundaries. She had never said much, but I could tell she appreciated that I kept things professional when I could have crossed the line. "What's wrong, Bill?" "It must be serious if I'm talking to one of my favorite secretaries." I tried to smile. "You never hold your calls. I can't remember the last time you asked me in here for a private chat, and it's clear something is bothering you. That stung a bit. I'm that easy to read? I thought I was keeping my feelings well hidden. Most of the time you are, but when you walked in today, something felt off. And knowing you, it's personal. You usually handle work matters calmly. So, is it the kids or Debbie? My bet is on Debbie. Did you two have a fight? I looked down at my lunch, trying to find my appetite. I knew I needed to eat something. I wish. Her eyes widened, and she quickly pulled a chair closer to my desk. Oh no, Bill, is it really that serious? I think it might be. Please, tell me. I thought about it, but couldn't bring myself to share more. As I thought more about everything, the fuss over just one word seemed even sillier than what Debbie had said last night. If you weren't there, if you didn't see her face or hear her voice, I could understand how it might sound like I was making a big deal out of nothing. We just disagreed. About something small, but what? It doesn't matter. I want you to be honest with me. I'm going to ask you some questions. Can you do that? I promise not to get upset. I just need someone to talk to. She hesitated for a moment before responding. I don't like this kind of thing, Bill. You say you won't be upset, but the truth can hurt. I need the truth, Cheryl. I believe I've been a good boss and a good friend. I want to show you that I care about you and our friendship. I hope you can trust me enough to be honest back. She reached out and took my hand. You have been a good friend, Bill. Go ahead and ask. Have you ever thought about us being more than friends? Would you consider it if I really tried? Do you find me at all interesting? She looked at me for a moment. I'm not trying to come after you, but I need to know. She shifted her gaze to the table and then back at me. A few times, when I was between relationships, but honestly, I never thought seriously about it. You're not on my list. I respect you, but I don't see you in that way. I believed that we could end up closer someday. An office party might bring us together, but it would only be for that moment. So I don't really interest you? I'm just not appealing? She stared at the desk for a long moment before meeting my eyes again. You're not my type, Bill. I'm sorry. You're a bit out of shape, and that matters to some people. People respect you in your job, but in a personal way, you're just another guy. She squeezed my hand, and I could see she was upset. Maybe that was too much honesty? I'm sorry if I hurt you. I gave a smile, even though it stung a little. What about Debbie? I want the truth from you about her, too. Is she as pretty as I think? Have you noticed guys being interested in her at parties? How does she respond? She took her time answering this one. She is attractive, Bill. She's tall, blonde, and has a nice look. At every party where both of you were, I noticed guys approaching her when you weren't around. I'm not surprised she gets attention. She really stands out. Now for a key question. How does she deal with that attention? She glanced down again. I really don't want to answer that, Bill. Please don't push me. I need to know. Is this what this is all about? Do you think she might like someone else? I'm not sure, but it's possible. I remember going to several office parties with you two. You invited me and my date to that Christmas party at UNF. I noticed that guys often seem to pay attention to her when you're not around. I'm not surprised to hear that. Usually, she handles it well. She can change the subject and walk away without any problem. A few times I've seen her chatting with others. It looked friendly, nothing inappropriate. Sometimes they seem a bit too familiar, but honestly, unless you plan to watch her every moment, that's just how it is. And to answer your real question, I haven't seen anything concerning. I've never noticed her doing anything that would cause worry. I can't say for certain what she does when you're not there, but I've never seen anything alarming. That's what we're talking about, right? She reached out and held my hand gently. She's a very attractive woman. Just like many pretty people, she could easily catch someone's attention. But if she were interested in someone else, I think you would have seen signs by now. She might be unfaithful, but if she is, she's being very careful. And honestly, I don't really think she is. Just my feeling. I leaned back in my chair and took a deep breath. I couldn't eat because I had no appetite. So you're saying she's an attractive woman who gets attention when I'm not around, and I'm just a boring guy. Doesn't that sound a bit unfair? People don't stay together just because of looks. They stay for love, companionship, and their family. You both have built a life together. Do you really think she would risk that for something temporary? People do it all the time, Cheryl. Physical attraction can matter a lot in a relationship, and that's not something we really have anymore. She looked at me with concern. There's only so much comfort one can give in a tough situation. The rest of the afternoon passed as I dealt with the usual stress of being a prosecutor. I tried not to dwell on what was waiting for me at home. That was the part weighing heavily on my mind. My job is hard, filled with tough cases and the struggles of many who are hurting. Home has always been my safe place, where I could find love with my wife and kids and tell myself that my job didn't reflect real life. But now that safe haven was starting to show cracks. I got home at 6:30, which wasn't too late for me. Many nights I found myself waiting alone until late, and Debbie often left dinner in the fridge or microwave for me. Sometimes she was home, other times she was out for meetings. There were always many meetings, both work and social events, that she had to attend. I got used to it, and even if she came home late, it didn't bother me much. Having worked on many cases, I could spot signs of unfaithfulness. Debbie had never hidden her schedule or acted cold when she got back. I never checked up on her. It just didn't cross my mind. But I had learned from others that she was usually where she claimed to be and doing what she said she was doing. What stung more than anything was the nagging doubt that started to change how I viewed her. Where was she now? Who was she with? Could I trust her if she said she was being truthful? I felt that anger building up in me again. If she had just laughed off the misunderstanding from the night before, I would have moved on. Even if someone else was involved, I would have preferred to stay unaware. Tonight, both kids were out too. I looked around. Debbie usually left a note on the fridge or microwave telling me where she had gone. There was nothing this time. I stood there in silence, listening. An empty house is very quiet, unlike the usual sounds of chatter, laughter, and music. I went to the liquor cabinet and pulled out a bottle of Goldschlager. I had tried it at a party a few years back and liked it, so I always kept a bottle at home. It usually took me a few months to finish one, but it was nice to have a drink now and then. I took a sip and walked through the house, stopping by the garage. Her 2004 Nissan 350Z was parked there, cold against my hand. Someone had picked her up, wherever she was. Eventually, I sank into the big chair across from the sofa and the TV. I turned it on, settling back and trying my best to forget about Debbie and where she might be. At 9:30 p.m., Bill Jr. burst through the front door, chatting on his cell phone. I called him a couple of times, and when he headed upstairs, I said, "BJ, come here, now." He looked surprised, as if he hadn't noticed me. After a moment, he said into the phone, "I have to go. Dad needs me. Talk later." He ended the call and looked at me, but didn't come any closer. "What?" he asked. His tone annoyed me, but I remembered he was a teenager. "I just wanted to ask you something. Do you know where your mom is?" He glanced at me for a moment before turning his gaze back to the stairs. It was clear he had other things on his mind. "I haven't seen her. That's not unusual, though. She's out a lot." He looked at me with a hint of indifference and said, "She's your wife. Why don't you know where she is?" I could have reacted harshly like my father might have, but he was from a different time. Bill Jr. was almost my height, and if I left any marks, there would be consequences at home. I didn't want to make things worse. So I shrugged and asked, "Have you done your homework?" He hesitated, trying to avoid the topic. I added, "If you don't go upstairs and answer my question, you'll be grounded for 2 weeks." He paused and turned to look at me as if I were something he didn't want to deal with. "You're not going to—" "Try me," I replied in that firm tone I saved for important moments. "Mom won't—" "What Mom says doesn't matter this time. You can tell her I said that. Answer my question or you'll miss seeing your friends for 2 weeks. If I have to come home early, I will." He took a deep breath. "I have 20 pages to read for English and 2 pages of math problems." "All right, go upstairs and start on it." He turned but muttered just loud enough for me to catch. What a jerk. No wonder Mom is out all the time. When he glanced back at me with a small smirk, I just smiled, which seemed to annoy him more. Later, I heard a car drive into the driveway, so I got up from my chair and checked the clock. It was 11 p.m. I moved to the front of the house and looked out the window. A shiny Audi had just pulled in. The car was running for a moment, and I could see two people inside. One with long hair leaned over. It looked like a friendly gesture before the passenger door opened. My wife got out, and I noticed a young man at the wheel, likely another assistant professor. As she walked toward the house, I noticed she had changed clothes after work. Her outfit didn't seem appropriate for teaching and made me wonder about her evening plans. What was she doing, and with whom? But I decided to keep my cool. I returned to the living room and sat down in front of the television, taking a few sips from my drink while flipping between channels to catch the news. I heard the front door open, followed by her footsteps through the house. They stopped as she approached the den. I knew without looking that she had paused and noticed me sitting there. I wondered if she would say anything. Just as I half expected, she didn't say a word and continued upstairs, clearly heading for our bedroom. After a little while, I heard the shower running, and then it went quiet. At midnight, Kelly walked in, glanced my way, and headed upstairs too. I sat there, watching nothing until 12:30 when I realized I needed to go to bed. I had been putting it off for a long time. I turned off the TV and climbed the stairs. When I got to the bedroom, everything was dark, except for a little light from the hallway that fell on Debbie's side of the bed. She didn't say anything when I entered. I had thought about speaking first, but changed my mind. I figured she would start talking if she wanted to. After all, she had said that morning she didn't want to communicate. I took a quick shower, changed in the walk-in closet, put on my pajamas, and quietly climbed into my side of the bed. I lay under the covers, staring at the ceiling for a few minutes. Next to me, I could hear Debbie's slow, steady breathing. She was pretending to be asleep, but I could tell she was awake. Her breathing was too calm. I decided not to check if her eyes were open. Eventually, I turned onto my side, away from her, and somehow drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I woke up early again, got dressed, and left the house without saying a word to her. I picked up a biscuit with eggs and bacon at Hardee's on my way to work. I dived into my busy day and found work a bit more enjoyable than usual. I didn't hear from Debbie at all, no calls or messages. It felt like I didn't even have a wife. I only thought of her when Cheryl stopped by my office and asked, "How did things go, Bill?" They didn't. What did she say? Not a word. How did that happen? When I came home, she was out. She got back around 11 in a car belonging to a young professor from her university. Then she took a shower and went to bed. Not a word. "Oh, Bill, I'm really sorry, but why didn't you—" "I just didn't feel up to it, Cheryl. I'm starting to think I know what's really going on. She needs to be the one to talk." Cheryl gave me a sympathetic look and said, "I know it will be tough, Bill, but you both need to have a conversation. After all, you're an attorney. You know how important it is to talk things over." "I'll think about it." I knew I should have gone home, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was looking for somewhere to relax when I found a bar that had opened a few weeks ago. The Last Call. It was a nice-sized place near a small shopping area. On a whim, I decided to go inside. The inside had a modern look with dark wood and mirrors everywhere, small tables and a long bar. Plants were placed in the corners, and there was a slightly raised area with a piano, hinting that there would be some entertainment sometimes. When I walked in, it was quiet, just how I liked it. A man of medium height with thick dark hair came up to me at the bar. He introduced himself as the owner and offered me a free drink to celebrate the opening. I asked for a beer, planning to have just a couple before heading home. I had to be careful because of my job. I took my time sipping the first beer, watching the people come in over the next few hours. By the time I got my second, the bar was busy. My phone had not rung at all. Debbie usually checked in on me, but I guessed she might be busy with her new colleague. After a while, I decided it was time to go home. I drove back, arriving in about 20 minutes. The kitchen and living room lights were on. I unlocked the door and first looked in the kitchen. There was a plate of pork chop, rice, and vegetables in the microwave. I wasn't hungry, and while I thought about throwing it away, I put it back in the fridge for the kids. As I walked past the living room, I saw Debbie sitting in a chair by the coffee table covered in papers. She had a drink nearby and some music playing softly. She didn't notice me as I walked by. I went upstairs to shower and then collapsed into bed, feeling very tired. I hadn't expected to fall asleep so quickly. When I woke up the next morning, I found I was alone in bed, and it looked like Debbie hadn't slept there. I went downstairs and saw her curled up on the couch, still in her work clothes, which looked a bit messy. When she noticed me, she slightly moved her head and opened her eyes. We both seemed surprised to see each other. After a moment, I grabbed my briefcase and left for work. It was Friday, and we were getting ready for trials, with jury selection starting on Monday. Fridays are usually busy with many details to handle, so I worked hard and didn't finish until 10:30 p.m. I got home around 11:30 p.m. The house was dark and quiet. I checked the fridge and found notes from my kids. Bill Jr. said he was sleeping over at a friend's, and Kelly mentioned she was going to a concert and staying with a friend's parents. They both left contact numbers, so I called to confirm. Their stories were true, and knowing their friends eased my worries. But where was Debbie? Her car was missing. I looked in the living room and bedroom, but she wasn't there. Then it hit me. Maybe we were heading toward a divorce. I shook my head, considering divorce after just one argument felt extreme. I nearly called her, but paused. It felt unnecessary. She had acted in ways that made me uneasy, and while I might have jumped to conclusions too quickly, her behavior made me question a lot. She had pulled away from me. She was spending time with people I didn't know. It was frustrating to be the one left wondering about the person I had shared my life with for so long. That night, I had little energy to think. I took a quick shower to wash away the tiredness, then collapsed into bed and fell asleep almost right away. When I woke up, it took a moment to get my bearings. I realized I was in my own bed, but something felt wrong. Then it dawned on me. I was alone. I looked at the clock on the nightstand. It was 10 a.m., and it seemed she had never come back to bed with me. I got out of bed and went downstairs, hoping she had returned late and was settled in the living room. Maybe she was up making breakfast, but that was becoming less likely. The house felt bigger, quieter, and emptier than I had ever felt before. Her car was gone, and there were no signs she had been home the night before. I walked through the house again and again, but the truth remained the same. I tried to recall if anything like this had happened in our 17 years of marriage. I knew it hadn't. One fight, a few harsh words, and it felt like our marriage was crumbling like sandcastles as the waves washed in. Was I really so oblivious that I hadn't seen the signs for months or even years? I could have begun calling around, but I was just the confused husband whose wife was out without a word about where she was or what she was doing. I got dressed and went to a nearby diner. The food wasn't the healthiest, but I loved their fluffy omelets, and I didn't care about that at the moment. It was nearly noon, and I was finishing my last bite of omelet and bacon when my phone rang. I answered without thinking, expecting it to be one of the kids. Bill. I swallowed a sip of coffee and said, "Hello, Roy." Roy Bascom was my father-in-law. We had always gotten along well. He owned a tire shop in the city and also had a few rental homes. "Hi, Bill. I tried calling your house, but you didn't answer." "I'm not there." "Right. Bill, I just wanted to let you know Debbie is at our house right now." "Debbie? That's interesting. I've known someone named Debbie. Is it the same person?" There was a short silence before Roy replied. "She mentioned you two were having some troubles and that you might be upset. I didn't want you to worry about where she was." "Why would I worry, Roy? Just because she didn't come home last night and didn't tell me if she was okay? You're acting like I really have a wife instead of someone who's using my money and then going out with other guys." "Bill, stop saying that. You're talking about Debbie, your wife, our daughter, the mother of your kids. You know she's not seeing anyone else." "I do, Roy. How can I be sure? She's gone a lot in the evenings, and all I have is her word about where she's been. Just the other night, I saw a young man from her work drop her off at 11 p.m. Did she mention that? By the way, what time did she arrive at your place last night?" "I think I'm starting to see what she's worried about. She told me you two had a fight and you accused her of being unfaithful. She hasn't heard from you since." "And I bet you're wrong about seeing her with someone. She told us it was for work, and the guy who gave her a ride is just a friend. A lady from her work picked her up but had to leave early, so the guy helped her get home. Nothing more than that. As for when she came to your house, she got there straight from school at 5:30 p.m. and stayed all night, unless you think we're lying to cover for her. Is that where your mind is now?" "Roy, she's your daughter, and I know you want to back her up, but after 19 years of seeing that I'm a good husband and father to your grandkids, maybe you could give me a little trust." And if she was planning to see you, why didn't she leave a note or call? Why didn't she do something so I wouldn't wake up thinking she was gone and start worrying about how we're going to split our things? I felt my anger rise like a slow wave, but I tried to keep my voice steady. And if she's so upset, why isn't she talking to me? Why do I have to hear from her father instead? After a pause, he replied, I know she made a mistake by not telling you where she was, Bill. I told her she should have. She isn't on the phone because she doesn't want to talk to you right now. I have to say, I've known you both since before you married, and I've never seen her this way. She's really upset with you. I think you hurt her by questioning her. I don't know if those words can be taken back. I took a last sip of my coffee. So, let me get this straight. She said some things that bothered me, but I'm just supposed to move on. I said some words that upset her, and now she's acting like everything's over. Is that how it is? When he stayed silent, I added, Well, if you could, please tell your daughter this for me. If that's how she feels, I don't care if she ever comes back. And make sure to tell her exactly this. I wish things were different. I hung up before he could say anything back. I didn't think he would anyway. I leaned back and thought about the call. Part of me felt relieved. She hadn't spent the night with anyone else, but still, staying out all night and not telling me was not how a loving wife should act. I took a moment to consider what I would do today and on Sunday. Usually, I would just stay home, watch some TV, maybe do a few chores, go out to eat, or shop a bit with Debbie. I could go back to the office, but then I suddenly had an idea. It would keep me at home in case Bill or Kelly came back. I drove home and sat down at the big computer in my small office next to our bedroom. I opened the monitoring program I had set up on all our computers. Since we had DSL, any signals sent or received on any computer showed up in the program. I knew my passwords and those of Bill Jr. and Kelly, so I removed them, and any remaining passwords were linked to Debbie's account. I had all day, so I went back 6 months and started looking through messages to and from her. Being a professor, she had many messages from students, colleagues, the university, and a few old friends. Nothing seemed unusual. At first, I didn't pay much attention. As I flipped through the messages, I saw a name I recognized. Lancelot for you. The email was from 3 months ago and talked about a meeting that had been called off for a Tuesday evening. Lance mentioned he knew she had left early and the chair had asked him to reach her to avoid wasting time. It was nothing personal. As I kept scrolling back, I found more messages between them. There were discussions about lesson plans, rescheduled meetings, office matters, and friendly greetings. Occasionally, she joked with him about a date he had planned for the weekend, telling him to stay calm. The closest to anything more personal was a light comment from him saying he wouldn't need to be careful if she joined him because he knew she was committed to her family. In her next reply, she wrote, Lance, please don't joke about that. It could lead to misunderstandings. If anyone in the office or at home saw it, they wouldn't think we're just friends. You know it's hard to convey tone in messages. I know you're joking, but my husband might take it the wrong way. I'd be upset if he thought there was anything inappropriate. In his next message, he replied, Sorry, Deb. I wouldn't want to cause you any worry. I know you care about your family, and I won't tease like that again. Thinking about what I had read, it seemed innocent except for a slight flirtatious remark, which she quickly addressed. Although it seemed simple at first, I could feel a special connection between Debbie and Lance, especially from her side. Lance was not the first single man to tell a married woman that he wouldn't pursue anything with her, until unexpected situations happened. So I kept reading. 2 months ago, Deb to Lance, Thank you so much for helping me with that project. I would have taken much longer without your help, and it all goes under my name. I'm sorry for needing your support. You should be out meeting new people, not spending time helping me with my work. If I tried to do it all myself, I'd hardly see my kids. Lance to Deb, No worries at all. I'd probably just be getting into trouble if I weren't helping you. This keeps me busy, and I'm glad to give you more time with your kids and your husband. Deb to Lance, My kids. Bill is more interested in the TV than what I'm doing. He gets home and just flops down in front of the screen. Sometimes I feel like he enjoys that more than being with me. I didn't mean it like that, it's just that. Lance to Deb, I understand. You've been married a long time, and he's around 40 or 45? People change as they get older. I can't imagine anyone would choose watching TV over being with you, but I'm still young. Maybe when I'm 30, I'll think differently. Deb to Lance. You're still so young. When I see you on campus, I don't think of you as a kid. Anyway, blushing, I can't picture you letting yourself go like Bill has. I asked him to join a gym with me, but he always says he doesn't have time. He's not in the best shape anymore. I never believed someone could have such toned abs, but what I saw at that party last month really impressed me. I can't imagine you with any extra weight. And on that note, I need to go to bed. Lance to Deb. Sweet dreams, Deb. Deb to Lance. Forget I wrote this, but if I keep thinking about your fitness, I'll dream sweet dreams. Good night. After reading that exchange, I wondered if I should keep going. It clearly showed how much she appreciated him. Instead of standing up for me, my loyal wife seemed to be admiring him more than me. I continued reading. A month ago, Deb to Lance. Sorry I didn't get to chat with you today. I was really busy. I've loved our lunches. Honestly, my day feels less fun when we can't spend that time together, but there's always tomorrow. Did you hear the latest gossip? Lance to Deb. I missed you too. Don't take this the wrong way, but you do know you're quite good-looking, right? That's what the kids call it. Even if we're just friends, I enjoy being around you. I know I can be a bit too honest at times. About the rumor, I guess you're talking about Professor Amarilla and Coach Johansson? Deb to Lance. Yes, can you believe it? In his office of all places. I heard that her husband walked in on them. I've met her. She's attractive, but older. She must be in her 50s, while Johansson seems to be in his 30s or 40s. What I heard is that her husband threw her out and now she's living with Johansson. Lance to Deb. You mean they were close, right, Deb? I know it sounds strange, but I heard Johansson is quite charming. Even after her husband came in, she wanted him to leave so they could keep talking. She must really value their connection. Deb to Lance. That's bold, Lance. But you're right. Being close is like what Bill and I used to experience. I can't believe I just said that. It feels like so long since we had that closeness. Sometimes I find it hard to remember those times. Honestly, Bill was never particularly exciting, and lately, it seems like he's lost his enthusiasm. Please promise you won't ever bring this up. I feel a bit guilty sharing all this, but I can't talk to him about it. Sometimes I think I'm going to burst if I can't say what's going on or not going on in my life. I really don't know how I managed before we met. I can be open with you since we're just friends and not romantically involved. That's what I really need right now. Lance to Deb. You know you can talk to me about anything, Deb. I wish I could help. I would never push you beyond what you're comfortable with, but you deserve to feel fulfilled. Does he know you sometimes look for happiness when he's not around? Deb to Lance. No, and he never will. How can I tell him that he doesn't meet my needs anymore? That I sometimes have to find my own ways to feel happy? I act as if everything is fine around him, but there are times I think he notices something is missing. Lance to Deb. Do you think you can keep going like this forever? Deb to Lance. What choice do I have? We've been married for 17 years and have 2 kids together. He tries hard to make me happy. I know there's nothing I could ask him for that he wouldn't do. The hard part is that he's such a good person. I should feel more deeply for him than I do. Don't get me wrong, I do care for him. Even though we flirt a bit sometimes, I really love him. If it wasn't for my love for him, I'd... Lance to Deb. Don't say it. Deb to Lance. I know you've treated me well, and I really appreciate that. You're a true friend, unlike some others. That's why you mean so much to me. I hope you realize how special your friendship is to me. And with that, I'll say goodbye. My vision blurred, and I realized it was because of the tears in my eyes. This was one of those moments where you wish for an easy way out, just to stop the sadness. My wife had fallen for another man. It was clear now. She cared for him more than she did for me. I could see it happening, like a slow-moving disaster that I couldn't stop. Once she crossed that line, our marriage would be over. He was younger, more fit, and more attractive than me, and my wife admired him. Meanwhile, I felt like a shadow of my former self, a man who no longer brought her joy. The future felt dark. I continued reading the messages, ready for more pain. One from Deb 2 weeks ago stood out. Deb. I'm sorry I didn't come by for lunch today, Lance. I was going to make up an excuse, but I couldn't lie to you. We've become too close for that. You deserve the truth. I think we need to take a step back. I know you have feelings for me, and that's flattering. You're a wonderful person, and I appreciate how much you've lifted my spirits. But I'm married, and I've always tried to stay true to that promise. That being said, I can't pretend I'm truly happy in my marriage. You know me well enough for that. I've shared more with you about my marriage than I probably should have. The truth is, I feel closer to you than to my husband, Bill. He doesn't realize how much our marriage is struggling. He's brilliant at work, but in our home life, he seems lost. I've lost respect for him, and it's hard to see a way forward. I've tried to think of ways to fix things, but nothing seems to work. I've even thought about bringing back the good feelings we once had, but I just don't have the energy anymore. I often pretend to be involved in moments, but I can't pretend to feel excited anymore. Things have changed, and he doesn't seem the same as he used to. He doesn't appear as enthusiastic or spirited as I remember. In the past, there was a connection that felt special. Now, our moments together feel ordinary, often ending quickly without much joy. It doesn't matter how good he is at work, he no longer fulfills me emotionally or mentally. I wonder if he even notices the spark we used to share. It seems he is focused on being a father and building his career, content with just a basic connection. I always knew he was on the quieter side. He wasn't very social in college, while I flourished in lively environments. That difference has only grown over time. Now he needs a reason to join gatherings, and only goes when there's a clear purpose. He shows little interest in enjoying those occasions. I've built a life beyond our home. Many times when I mention meetings or outings with friends, I'm looking for connections beyond being a wife and mother. I long for attention and appreciation. It's sad that I no longer feel that bond with him. I can't pretend to be excited when we are together, and I can't tell him about my outings. If he asked why I lied about my plans, what could I say? That I feel happier when he isn't with me. While that's true, I know he wouldn't take it well. Anyway, my friend, I didn't mean to talk for so long. I wanted to share my feelings and explain why we won't see each other much soon. I sense that changes are coming, though I'm unsure what that means for me. And if, in a few months, I find myself alone again, I hope you understand and keep clear of any drama. I don't want anyone to think our friendship had any effect on my marriage. Because it didn't. You have been a real friend when I needed support. You will always be important to me. If I find a way to fix things, I will treasure our friendship and wish you happiness. Always your friend, Debbie. I must have sat there for a long time because the light outside changed. I looked at the clock. It was 6 p.m. I'm not even sure what I had been thinking about during that time. I think I was imagining what my future would hold. I wondered what it would be like to come home to an empty place when Debbie was with someone else. What it would be like to see my kids only sometimes. What it would feel like to sleep alone for the first time in years without hearing her next to me. How would I buy groceries just for myself? These seemed like small things, but after 20 years, they were as important as the time we shared together. She had been part of my whole life, and losing her felt like losing a part of me. Because now, I knew there was not going to be an us anymore. There wouldn't be a Maitland family living happily at home. That was in the past. And now I understood why she viewed our marriage as something that had already ended. Somehow, I found a way to wake up again. I printed copies of all the emails we had exchanged over the last 6 months, including those with Lance. Not that I needed them for any legal reasons. Even though infidelity doesn't matter in divorces today, especially in Florida with its no-fault divorces, it still troubled me. She could even say it wasn't an emotional affair at all. I could argue it was, but what difference would it make? I knew I should confront her with the emails, make her admit she had feelings for someone else or that she had stopped loving me. But again, what would that change? I felt like I had already lost her. I could try to push for counseling or slow things down, hoping to reconnect with her. But deep down, I knew counseling might not help. By 8 p.m., Bill Jr. and Kelly had not arrived. I called their temporary homes and learned that their mother had picked them up. She must have taken them to her parents for the weekend. That meant I had the place to myself. I sat in front of the dark TV, trying to decide what to do. I felt stuck, like a turtle flipped on its back. I could turn around but wasn't getting anywhere. Then, suddenly, I started to move. I went to our bedroom, pulled out 2 suitcases from the closet, and began packing clothes. Enough shirts, pants, shoes, and coats to last a couple of weeks without wearing the same thing twice. I filled up the back of the SUV and went back inside to gather important court documents and computer files. I printed all of Debbie's emails again, just to ensure I had everything in case I lost the first copies. Then, I made sure to erase them securely so no one could recover the information. I thought about keeping an eye on Bill Jr. and Kelly, but they would expect me to check their computer use. I didn't think Debbie would notice me looking at her emails, and if it weren't for recent events, I wouldn't have thought to check at all. Honestly, I would have preferred not to see those emails, but it was probably better that I did, so I wouldn't be completely taken by surprise if she decided to leave. Before I left, I went to the bathroom. I took a moment to take off my wedding ring. After nearly 20 years, my finger had swollen enough that it was stuck on my knuckle. With some effort, I twisted it off. I grabbed a piece of paper from the copier attached to the main desk and wrote a few words. I placed my ring on it and turned off the lights in the bedroom. I locked the house and switched off all the lights, leaving the building in darkness. I had lived there for almost 10 years with my wife and children, and I didn't think I would be coming back. As I drove through the dark streets toward downtown, I tried to think about my feelings, but I mostly felt numb. I made my way downtown, past the courthouse and the city law offices by the river, past the sheriff's office, and then turned toward the riverside of the road. The fancy riverfront condos were here, and our office had one for employees, witnesses, or others needing a place to stay. As one of the 3 main employees in charge, I kept a key to the condo on my key ring and let myself in. I noticed the doorknob, which I had opened with my left hand. There was a small mark on it. It seemed I had hurt my finger more than I realized when taking off a ring. I went into the bathroom and washed my hands, finding a bottle of rubbing alcohol under the sink that I used on my skin. I took a moment to gather my thoughts before heading back out to the car. After unloading my things, I finally fell onto the bed, feeling tired yet relieved. I managed to get most of my clothes off and fell asleep while watching a news show on the television in the corner, wearing comfortable clothes. As I drifted off, the news talked about the Cardinals in Rome competing for the job left open by the recently passed John Paul II. It was oddly comforting to see that even with my troubles, the world kept moving, politics were still happening. Problems continued, and life went on. The next morning, I woke up suddenly, alert and aware of my surroundings. I lay there for a few moments, enjoying the rare feeling of having no responsibilities. There were no children to wake up, no errands to run, and no obligations hanging over me. I thought about a classic rock line, realizing its meaning. Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. I had never thought I would feel that way. Yet here I was, feeling empty yet free. I wished for a sense of direction or a desire to reach out to someone. But the truth struck me. I didn't really have friends. I had co-workers, people I worked with, but no one to enjoy a drink with or talk to deeply. Most of my connections were through my partner, Debbie, and I felt hesitant to reach out to her friends. I also thought about my mother and stepfather, who lived south in a suburb of Orlando. I dreaded the idea of their sympathetic tones if I shared my situation with them. Eventually, I showered, put on some clothes, and went out to get a breakfast sandwich from a nearby restaurant. I spent some time downtown, sitting on a bench along the Riverwalk and watching boats float along the St. Johns River, feeling like the only person in the world. I thought about calling someone I knew, but feared bothering them, especially if they were in a new relationship. As time passed, the clock slowly moved toward 9 p.m. I'd had a steak at a downtown restaurant, called a couple of junior co-workers who were going to lead the cases the next morning to ensure they were ready, and then returned to the condo to watch cable news. At 9:15 p.m., my cell phone rang. I always keep it charged, and I always keep it with me. It's the first rule for police and lawyers: always be ready, day or night. I almost didn't answer when I saw Debbie's name on my phone, but I did and said, "Hello." "You've got to be kidding me." "Well, hi. It's nice to hear from you, too." It sounded like she was trying hard to find the right words. "How could you? How could you do something like that where the kids could see it? What's wrong with you?" "Calm down and take a deep breath. No need to get so upset." You don't think about the kids at all. What are they supposed to think? I assume you're talking about my ring? Yes. You react to a few words I said, and then, while I visit my parents for a few days, you take your things away and leave your wedding ring out in the open. How could you do that? I'm starting to wonder about your state of mind. Did you read the note? Her frustration was clear on the line. You think that was funny? This should make it easier for you. Like I'm the one who wants out of this marriage. I'm not the one who spent a night away without telling me where you were. I'm not the one who took the kids for the weekend without letting me know. I held back about the emails I'd found. I knew that would lead to accusations of spying and distrust if she knew I had access to her laptop. But more than that, it felt like the person I once knew was no longer the same. Let her figure out her own truths. Maybe it was the lawyer in me. There's nothing like catching someone in a lie and letting them talk until they trap themselves. How did it come to me doing this with my own wife? I almost hung up. It might be easier to walk away, to forget the woman I loved for so long, than face the fact that she might be hiding something. That realization felt heavy, but she wouldn't stop denying everything. I shouldn't have been away without calling you. I'm sorry. I was really upset. But about that rumor, Dad said you told him that story. It never happened, Bill. Douglas was just nice enough to give me a ride home. I never did anything wrong. It was all in your head. What's happened to you? I've been angry and questioned your choices, but you're worrying me now. First, you get upset because I misunderstood some words, then you accuse me of being unfaithful, and now you claim I was with someone who wouldn't think of harming my reputation. That's just not right, Bill. I almost called Douglas by a different name, but I knew that could reveal my thoughts. So this guy, Doug, how close of a friend is he? There was a long pause. Doug is an assistant professor in the business department. He started about a year ago. I have to meet with him because I've been assigned as his mentor. They pair new staff with those who have more experience. We've had a few lunches and danced at some events, but I don't think you were at any of those. You know how you don't like most parties. Even if you were there, I would still have danced with him. Dancing isn't your favorite thing, and he's pretty good at it. He's a nice guy, but that's all. I'm over 10 years older than him, and I have never kissed him. Is he a good friend? Bill, he's a friend. We talk sometimes and have worked together. But he's just a colleague like many others. Are you going to start worrying about Doug now? No, not if you say he's just a casual friend. But why did you wear that outfit to the meeting the other night? It didn't seem very professional. There was a long silence. Okay, it was a little much, but Bill, I'm not old. I feel good about how I look. I don't want attention, but I like to feel confident. Once in a while, I want to look nice. I'm not trying to get noticed or anything, but I want to feel good about myself. You've never worn that outfit to any event I attended. Oh, come on, Bill, do we really have to talk about this? Why not, Debbie? Don't all the self-help books say couples need to be honest? If I'm being unreasonable, why can't you answer a simple question? Why do you wear those clothes when I'm not around? Can't we talk about this when you get home? I'm not sure I'll be coming home. A long silence followed. Why am I trying to hold on to something you don't seem to care about anymore? You want to know why I dress up? Because it feels like I'm invisible to you. You don't notice what I wear or when I do something different with my hair. You don't greet me warmly when you arrive or try to connect with me during the day. It's been years since we spent quality time together. I wear those clothes because I want to feel appreciated and remember what it was like to be noticed. Is that honest enough for you? This time I felt her honesty, and I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, Deb, I really am. I knew she didn't understand how much I meant it. She didn't know my regrets, how I had let our relationship slip away while focusing too much on work and letting time fade our early relationship. I was apologizing for taking her love for granted until she felt more connected to someone else than to me. So, are you coming home? Why would I? Because I felt lost beside someone else. Because I didn't see a way back to what we once had? No, Deb, I'm not. This isn't about anger. I just think we need some time apart. After a long pause, she said, All right, Bill, but someday you will regret this choice. You will wish you had done things differently. Maybe. Please say goodbye to the kids for me. They're too grown up for that now, but you probably don't see it. You should be the one doing that." She hung up. I turned off the TV and lay back, looking at the ceiling lit by moonlight from the balcony. I felt regret about a lot of what had happened lately, but I reminded myself these problems had been building for months, maybe even longer. Monday came in like any other day. There were no big cases to think about, just some cases. One involved a Navy man from the nearby base who, in a fit of anger, hurt his wife and their 8-month-old baby, leading to terrible results. His wealthy parents hired a smart lawyer from New York to help. Another case was about 2 brothers involved in illegal activities who tried to scare a competitor. Their actions sadly led to the death of an 8-year-old boy. The boy had bravely protected his younger siblings but was injured in the process. In the end, the 3 were facing serious consequences as the legal process continued. It was a sad situation, but we had to ensure justice for the young boy. It wasn't an unusual week, but the legal work took time and focus. We had to select a jury and support witnesses through everything. Days felt long, while nights were short, filled with preparations for what was to come. My job was to keep everything on track. At one point, Cheryl came into my office. "They say you're staying on the river? Did you move out on Debbie and the kids?" "Things happen." She shut the door behind her. "Bill, what's going on?" "There's too much to explain right now. I just needed some time for both of us. You know that moving out can lead to lasting changes? I don't know what the future will bring." "You should have been sure we wouldn't end up like this." I stayed quiet, and she shook her head. "Bill, I hate to see another marriage fall apart. Don't do this. I don't know what you're thinking, but don't walk away without trying to fix it. You're strong in the courtroom. Don't let this go without fighting for it. You can't have a marriage if both people aren't willing to stay together. That's where I'm at, Cheryl. Please, it's better to leave things as they are now." We started jury selections for all 3 trials, and the New York lawyer used different tactics to help the defense. I thought it was a waste of money, but after all, he was their son. If I had a son like him, I'd probably fight just as hard. It was just another Monday filled with surprises and unexpected issues, along with unhappy people and irritated judges who probably needed to keep tissues nearby to remind themselves that they were not all-powerful, just regular folks with temporary authority. At 7 p.m., I was about to end my day when my phone rang. I keep it on vibrate during the day, but it buzzes loudly, so I never miss it. "Bill, what's going on with you?" "I'm not sure how to answer that, Roy. What do you mean?" "Debbie called this morning and said you've moved out and left your wedding ring behind. How can you not know what's happening?" I couldn't help but laugh. "That's quite the picture, Roy. Thanks. I needed a laugh. If you want the truth, I haven't moved out. I just took a few things to spend some days away from Debbie. Things have been a bit tense. I don't want to say something I'll regret. You know, the kind of stuff that can change everything. I'm just giving us some space." He paused for a moment, then spoke more calmly. "Bill, I've known you for 20 years. I'll be honest. I've never thought you were the best husband or father. You've let yourself go a bit, and that's not wise with someone like Debbie. You've spent too much time in the office and not enough with her or the kids. A marriage isn't just a place to eat or sleep. You can't just let it run on its own and forget about it. I'm older than you, Bill, and I know what I'm talking about. You have to work at a marriage. That's my main worry for you. I think you gave up on your marriage a long time ago." It was my turn to be silent. Finally, I admitted, "I can't deny you have a point. Some of it is my fault, and I see that now. But there's more to it." "What do you mean? Did something happen last week that changed things? What was it?" "I'm sorry. I can't share that right now. It just made me realize I need to think about everything." "Okay, you don't want to talk about it. I care about Debbie and the kids. I even like you, although I'm worried about how you're handling things. I'm asking you as a favor, Bill. Go home. Go home tonight. Living in 2 places won't fix anything. Can you do that for me? I can't remember the last time I asked you for a favor." I thought about it. I still felt uneasy in my stomach, like we had crossed a line and there was no turning back. But I still found myself at 8:30 p.m. Walking back into the home I had left, I hadn't planned on coming back. I could hear Bill Jr.'s music blasting from his room, and as usual, Kelly was likely still out. As I walked past the living room, Debbie appeared at the door. She wore shorts and a light top. From her expression, she seemed surprised to see me. When she noticed the briefcase I carried, her look changed again. Is this just a quick stop? Are you leaving everything at the river? I wanted to come home for a night. Is that okay? Why would you want to stay with someone who's moving on and not thinking about you? I thought you wouldn't need me or the kids anymore. This is my house too. But let me ask you again. Can I spend the night here, in our bed? She turned and walked back into the living room. Over her shoulder, she said, like you said, it's your house too. If you want to stay, go ahead. I might not be in the bed, but you're welcome to it. Oh, and there's no food for you. I didn't expect you. I replied, I'll find something in the fridge. It's no trouble. I placed the briefcase by our bed and discovered my wedding ring sitting on the table. I struggled to get it back on, even with some lotion, but finally, I managed to slide it over my finger. Then I went down and found half a package of hot dogs, cooked them, and made a quick meal. I ate in the kitchen. Afterward, I went back upstairs and chose to enjoy a long, hot shower instead of a quick one. I leaned against the wall as the warm water poured over me. I tried to picture myself as I used to be, an 18-year-old with a flat stomach and a full head of hair. I may not have been perfect, but I wasn't too bad. Are you going to leave me any hot water? I opened my eyes to see her standing just outside the shower. I could have taken her look more seriously, seen myself as she did, but strangely, I felt free. We could share. Save some water. Surprise crossed her face, followed by something that felt like disappointment. Oddly, it didn't hurt. That's okay, you can finish. I didn't mean to interrupt. I took a moment and then reached for her wrist, inviting her to step in. She stumbled, and I quickly caught her to keep her from falling. What? Bill, let me go, she said, frustration in her voice. I leaned in a little closer, trying to calm her down. The water kept pouring down, soaking us both, making the air feel tense. She tried to pull away, but I held on, not wanting things to get out of hand. Stop it, Bill, she said shakily. This isn't right. I paused, realizing that neither of us really knew how to handle the moment. Her words resonated with me, and I let her go. She turned away, looking upset, and stepped out of the shower, wrapping a towel around herself. As she walked away, I stood there, the sound of the water drowning out the thoughts in my head. It was clear something had changed between us, and getting mad wouldn't fix it. The scene had an urgent mood as they faced a moment filled with feelings. Deb felt a rush of emotions, thinking about their surroundings. Please, not now, she whispered, realizing their children might come in. In that moment, Bill, feeling a strong connection, wanted to focus on them. The air was thick with expectation as he introduced an object that would make things more interesting, creating a mix of feelings. Deb reacted quickly. Surprise crossed her face as something new surrounded her. She moved instinctively, caught up in the feelings, and the intensity between them rose. Their chemistry was strong, and Bill felt the exciting bond they shared, eager to explore it more. The night was full of energy, reminding them of a connection that had danced around but never fully disappeared. As they explored this difficult path, they found new things about each other, realizing that even in tough times, their bond had a depth that was exciting and unfamiliar. I let go of her and took a step back, allowing the tension between us to ease for a moment. There was a heavy silence filled with unspoken feelings. I turned away to gather my thoughts, then came back to sit beside her. She looked at me with confusion and a hint of anger, the energy between us still unresolved. Debbie, I've had time to think, I said softly. I was wrong to accuse you. I don't think you're unfaithful, but I can't shake the feeling that you're unhappy. Sometimes I worry you see this marriage as something from the past. I know part of it is my fault. I've been too focused on work and I've let things slip away between us. But saving a marriage takes both of us. One person can't do it alone. She gazed at me, and I could see the pain and doubt in her eyes. There was no simple way to fix what was broken, but I knew this talk was just the start. And I'm not sure you really want to save our marriage, I added. She met my gaze, and I felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Bill, I just never thought you'd notice what I hinted at. But you're right. There is a problem in our marriage. I wish I could explain it all. We really need to talk. But I can't right now, and what just happened was nice. It brought back some memories. but a small, nice moment can't make up for all those years. I gently put my finger on her lips to quiet her. I know it can't, Deb. No quick fix, but I just want you to know that I still care about you. And I need you. Just remember that, okay? Oh, and I found some things a few months ago during that case we were working on, and I thought you might like them. She gave me a small smile. I did. Thank you. I'm happy to help. Really, truly. She smiled again. I could tell. You said it twice in a short time. It's been a while. We chatted some more, but soon I turned off the light on my side of the bed. After she finished with her shower, she got into bed beside me. I thought she might come closer, but I was wrong. She stayed on her side, her back to me, and I watched her breathe. Sometimes she took a deep breath followed by a shaky exhale. It was quiet, but she might have been crying. In that moment, I realized that Roy's advice, while well-meaning, was not quite right. We had a nice moment together, but, as she said, nothing had really changed. I hadn't reached her heart like I wanted to. All I had done was offer a brief escape from stress, and with everything I learned from the emails, I knew tonight wouldn't change anything. I felt even more down, lying next to my wife. The next day, we made some progress in selecting juries for the 3 cases we had started, and I found myself busy with many issues and requests for my time. It was easy to fall back into only focusing on work. I got home at 10 p.m. on Monday night. Both kids were already in their rooms. When I walked in, Debbie was using the computer in the den. She glanced at me as I entered and quickly switched away from whatever she was looking at to a lesson plan. I peeked into the room, walked over to her, and leaned down to give her a quick kiss on the cheek. Her face looked a bit flushed, but she smiled at me. Timid, but she was making an effort. Hi, sorry I'm late. As always, everyone needed something from me today. She looked up at me, and her smile faded. I know, Bill. Everyone wants your attention, and there's only so much of you to give, right? I went upstairs, read a few pages of reports, and then took a shower before bed. Debbie didn't come in until I was almost asleep. The spy program was on the big desktop in my office, and I couldn't check it without her noticing. But I was determined to find out what she had been up to. On Tuesday, even with people bothering me, I took an hour and a half to myself and drove home around noon. I knew everyone would be out. I logged on and read the latest emails she had sent and received. In one from Monday afternoon, she shared some thoughts about our evening together on Sunday. Lance to Debbie. Wow, do you think someone helped him change? That doesn't sound like the husband you've been telling me about. At least you must feel a little more at ease today. It's funny because you didn't seem relaxed before. Did his actions make you think about staying with him? Seems like he's really trying to improve. I feel sorry for you, but you've got to give him some credit for his efforts. Debbie to Lance. I know, Lance, but... Lance to Debbie. But what? Debbie. Oh, Lance, I don't even know how to say this, even to you, but I think Sunday night made me realize we're not going to make it. Lance to Debbie. But you said he was excited, and that has been missing. He may be late to change, but it seems like he really wants to. Debbie to Lance. That's true. His heart is in the right place. Mine isn't. He did all the right things, and it felt good to know I still can spark something in him, but it was just a physical moment. I understood afterward that we connected, but it wasn't the deeper connection I wanted. What happened was nice, but... Lance to Debbie. So have you figured out what you're going to do? Are you going to tell him about the awards ceremony at UNF on Friday night? Debbie. I haven't made a final choice yet, but I'll decide soon. No, I'm not going to tell him about the awards dinner. I'll say it's just work and that spouses aren't really encouraged to come. But I need to be there. I want to support you when you receive that award for being one of the best new professors. Lance to Debbie. I really want you there. It won't be nearly as enjoyable without you by my side. Debbie to Lance. Don't use that word, it makes me feel older. You don't think of me as an old lady, do you? Lance to Debbie. No, not at all. You have a youthful spirit compared to most of the students here, and you don't look like a teacher. Debbie to Lance. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Stop it. I'm trying to stay focused right now. I need to sort things out with Bill before we start talking like that. Lance to Debbie. I understand. I won't pressure you until things calm down at home, but I need to say I can't wait until Friday. Debbie to Lance. Take care. Lance to Debbie. I will, but it's not easy. Debbie to Lance. I know you forget I saw you trying to get up that day in the restaurant when I wore that outfit. It can be challenging. Bye. And that was it. Our friendship had shifted to something more complex. She was going to put her focus on her commitment to Bill on a special day, and I felt a sense of loss. I couldn't shake off the feelings from everything that had happened. Honestly, I shouldn't have been surprised. I expected this to happen. Yet even though I saw it coming, I rushed to the bathroom, feeling overwhelmed. I managed to change some details, copied her emails, and then removed them from the system. As I stepped out of the house, I knew it was for good. No more second-guessing. I hadn't taken off my ring, which still felt uncomfortable on my finger, but it didn't really mean anything anymore. There was no marriage to hold on to. I felt defeated, but outside the sun was shining, kids were playing nearby, and life went on. That night around 10 p.m., I called home. When no one answered, I left a message saying I would be working late and staying at the River Apartments for a few days. I didn't get any replies, so I figured it was okay with everyone. Friday came, and as usual, it felt a bit dull. The only time Fridays are exciting is when a jury is reaching a decision. During trials, judges often try to finish up early to enjoy their evenings, although in Jacksonville that doesn't always happen. The same applies to jurors, witnesses, and law enforcement. By mid-afternoon, things usually started to calm down, and by 5 p.m. the courthouse was mostly empty. I got home by 6:15 p.m., managing to get through traffic pretty well. As I entered, I saw Bill Jr. jumping into a friend's car, and Kelly passed by me on her way out. She gave me a shy smile, almost like she was embarrassed. I realized I shouldn't have been surprised. She was old enough to understand our marriage, and I guessed she had noticed the closeness between her mom and a young professor. I wondered why she hadn't tried to tell me about it. But seeing her embarrassment made me think it was me who made her uncomfortable, not any relationship her mother had. So far, I hadn't felt much warmth from my family. As I walked inside, Debbie came down the stairs. She looked beautiful and seemed a bit surprised, as if she had been trying to leave before I got home. "Oh, Bill, I thought you'd be home later." Or I thought you knew that I usually finish work earlier on Fridays unless there's a big decision. Everything wrapped up fine. Where are you off to, all dressed up?" She wore a nice black dress with a light wrap that looked both elegant and formal. It was certainly fancier than any college event I was used to. "Oh, there's an important event tonight for college staff. I just wanted to dress up a bit. It's all business, really. I don't think any spouses are invited. You've worked hard all week, and I didn't want you to spend your evening listening to speeches about college stuff." "Why don't you relax, order a pizza, and we can plan for the weekend when I'm home? I'll try not to be late." I almost said I wanted to join her, even if it might be boring, but I stopped myself. "Okay, you do look great. I'm sure everyone will enjoy seeing you there. Just take care of what you need to do first. Don't worry about coming back early. I know those work events can go on for a long time. Stay out as late as you want. I'll probably go to bed early tonight. We can plan something for tomorrow." She smiled, clearly relieved, and gave me a friendly kiss on the cheek. She hesitated for a moment, as if she felt bad about her evening plans, but then she turned and walked out the door. She was already outside and didn't hear me when I said goodbye. The university has a large campus. A winding road takes you around the area and brought me to the UNF arena, where graduations, basketball games, and other events happen. I showed my ID to a campus officer who let me park in a quiet lot across the street. For a work event, a lot of nicely dressed people were entering the building. I didn't have an invitation, but showing my ID and saying I was Professor Maitland's husband helped me get in. Inside, there was a stage at the far end and several tables set up in the big hall. I noticed there was a bar nearby. There was seating on both sides, and I started toward the bar but stopped in the seating area before reaching it, climbing almost to the top. I was alone and had a good view of the crowd. I took my binoculars and searched the crowd for about 10 minutes before I finally saw her. She was at a table with 5 others, 3 men and 2 women, close to the stage. If Doug Lance was receiving an award tonight, that made sense. Doug was tall, slim, and wearing a tuxedo. They were seated closely, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder as he shared something with her. The 2 couples sitting with them seemed friendly, and from the way my wife and Doug were looking at each other, they seemed to get along well. I realized now why I had felt a bit out of place at the university events I had attended with Debbie over the past 3 months. I watched from my spot as they laughed and whispered to each other, making little gestures that showed they had a close connection. Their body language was clear. At times, they even shared bites of food from each other's plates, not noticing anyone else around them. It bothered me. If Debbie was starting another relationship, couldn't she at least be a little more careful about it? It felt like I was just a joke during my rare visits with her. I found a seat in the top row of the arena and watched the event below. As people enjoyed the evening, the speeches went on, and soon they invited Doug up to the front to get an award for being one of the best new teachers. He called out to Debbie, and even though she hesitated, she decided to join him on stage. She stood next to him, blushing as he thanked her for her help over the past year and praised her lively spirit. To my surprise, he leaned in and shared a brief, warm look with her. The crowd erupted with applause, like a scene from a romantic movie where the main character finally shows his feelings for the leading lady. Debbie seemed surprised but happy, not quite fitting the image of a mother with 2 teenage kids. The awards ceremony carried on for another 45 minutes before announcing drinks and dancing for those who wanted to stay. Half the tables had just been cleared away. A band started playing romantic songs from the 90s and some lively tunes from the early 2000s. They looked great together. From the glances exchanged by other couples, I could tell I wasn't the only one who thought so. I wondered what those who knew she was married thought about this. Had she told them we had an open marriage, or that I was okay with this, or that she might soon be free? Or maybe academics just didn't worry about traditional marriage rules. Taking a deep breath, I decided it was time to put a stop to this. I made my way onto the dance floor, moving through the crowd. I stood out in my suit without a tie among men in tuxedos and women in fancy dresses. As I got closer to my wife and her partner, I could hear whispers. I knew I had their attention. They were so wrapped up in each other that they didn't notice me until I spoke. "Congratulations, Doug, on your award and on sharing this moment with my wife." They both froze, shock painted on their faces. Debbie looked at me, her eyes wide, clearly surprised I was there. Doug looked startled too, switching his gaze between Debbie and me. "Bill," Debbie finally said softly. What are you doing?" Her surprise quickly turned to annoyance. "Why, Bill? I told you not to come tonight. Why didn't you stay home?" I couldn't help but chuckle. "And miss this?" I said. "Come on, how often does a husband see his wife so close to another man in front of all these people? You don't hide it very well." Doug stepped slightly between us and raised his hand, trying to ease the tension. "Mr. Maitland, this isn't what you think. Debbie is here as my mentor." I gave him an annoyed look, my frustration bubbling just below the surface. "Oh, I'm sure she's been a good teacher for you, Doug. I bet you learned fast." Debbie leaned in and whispered urgently, "Bill, please don't do this. Not here. Not now. Not here in front of everyone. So it's okay for you to be close to him in public, but I'm the one who's wrong for coming here? You're making a big deal out of nothing, Bill. It's not what you think." More people were gathering around us, and I knew this moment would be the topic of conversation in the office for a long time. My smile disappeared as I looked at her, my voice low but sharp. "I saw everything. I've been watching all night. Don't treat me like I don't know." Doug moved closer, clenching his hand, ready to step in. "Bill, I understand you're upset, but," he started, "it's Mr. Maitland to you, and I have every right. Just so you remember, she's my wife. She may not be for much longer, but she's the one I'm supposed to be sharing love with, at least until she decides otherwise." That made him pause for a moment, and Debbie turned red when she saw the people gathering around us. "By the way, you're a professor, right? Do you teach any ethics? How does it feel to get close to someone else's spouse breaking up a marriage? Even if it wasn't a happy marriage, it was still a marriage." I could see he was getting angry, his hands tightening into fists, but he was trying to stay calm. "Bill, Mr. Maitland, I know it looked bad, but we're just friends. We've gotten close over the last several months, but I would never cross that line." I gave both of them an unimpressed look, unable to believe they were still trying to deny it. "Doug, just stop. I know my wife has told you what I do for a living. I can read people, their body language and expressions. You like my wife, and she seems to feel the same way." I might have acted out of frustration, but it was likely built up over the past weeks that made me move towards him without thinking. He stepped back, and his hand brushed against my face, causing me to stumble backward. I fell to the ground, looking up at all the faces watching us, some shocked, others amused. I saw Debbie just standing there, looking more angry than worried. I shook my head to clear my mind. It had been years since I'd been in a fight, and I had forgotten what it felt like. As I stood up, I heard Doug say, "I'm really sorry, Deb. I didn't mean to hit him, but he swung first." I got to my feet, feeling a bit unsteady, and pushed away someone who was trying to help. "Okay, let's try this again." I rushed at him, swinging my arms awkwardly. It had been too long since I'd tried to do this, and he easily dodged me, pushing me back down again. A few people started to laugh. He looked down at me and said, "We don't need to do this. Let's be adults about it." I got back up slowly and walked towards him, feeling a bit of blood on my face. Debbie shook her head. "Please, Bill, don't do this." "You've embarrassed me enough already. I have to face these people." I swung again, and when he blocked my right, I managed to hit his stomach. He was surprised and quickly struck back, leaving me off balance. There was blood everywhere, and for a moment my eyes blurred with tears. I wiped my face, feeling the sting of blood. "Bill, just go," Debbie said urgently. "You've ruined everything. This was Doug's big night, and you show up and make it awkward for both of us." I looked at her and replied, "I'm just getting started." Debbie looked shocked, as if she couldn't believe that I would stand up for myself. Her faith in Doug and her disregard for me hurt more than any insult. "Leave, Bill. Don't do anything foolish. Doug is younger and stronger, and he can easily overpower you. You've already embarrassed us, so don't make it worse." "I hear you, but I'm not backing down." I moved forward, but suddenly I was hit hard. Pain shot through my face and body, and the world spun. I went down to one knee, trying to clear my head. Laughter surrounded me, and I could barely see through the chaos. Doug tried to help me up. "Come on, Bill, let's end this. I'll help you out of here." Something snapped in me. Without thinking, I pushed past him and struck Doug. He staggered back, and I managed to get to my feet, holding my ground. Doug fell to the ground, holding his face, and before anyone could stop me, I kicked him. Debbie screamed. In an instant, several men grabbed me and pulled me down, pressing me to the ground amid the chaos. Debbie knelt by Doug, trying to assist him, tears streaming down her face. Her loyalty cut deeper than anything else. Someone shouted, "Call for help!" Security came quickly, and everything faded away as I lay still, accepting whatever was going to happen next. "Get him out of here," an officer instructed. Another person added with disdain, "Let's see how tough he is in a holding cell." Nearby, a tall, well-dressed older man walked over to Doug. "Professor Baker, are you okay? Should we call for an ambulance?" Then he looked at me, his gaze intense. "And you, sir, will regret your actions. Hurting one of our staff is serious." I recognized him. "You must be President Myers, right?" He hesitated but turned back after sensing my tone. "Yes, I'm the president of UNF, and you are?" "William Maitland, head supervising assistant state attorney for the Third Circuit, and the husband of the woman with your professor." He glanced between Debbie, Doug, and me, quickly understanding the situation. "Mr. Maitland, you're an officer of the court, and you've hurt someone in front of many witnesses. This does not reflect well on you. However, we might be willing to be a bit understanding here," I interrupted him. "President Myers, you're heading into a situation much worse than you think." His expression changed, showing that he wasn't used to being talked to like that. He came from a wealthy background and had a lot of power, which likely explained why he was in charge. "I don't see what you're trying to say," he replied. "Let's talk in private before things get even more complicated." He didn't seem happy, but he signaled for two men to help me stand. We moved to a quieter area toward the back. Myers brought Doug and Debbie along. Their faces were tense. Once we were away from the crowd, Myers said, "All right, Mr. Maitland, please share your thoughts." Doug was starting to feel better, but still looked shaken. Debbie stayed close to him, her eyes filled with anger. I took a deep breath. "You know what's been happening. My wife and Professor Baker have been getting too close. I saw him take her home the other night, and it wasn't just for work." Myers looked more alert, but stayed quiet. "I saw them together tonight, behaving in a way that no married woman should with another man. It was clear to everyone it was not just a friendly meeting." The room was silent as my words settled. I believed I could convince others when I take legal action against UNF for interfering in my marriage. Her actions were known by many. I thought Debbie would lose her temper. She looked ready to react strongly. "You can't be serious," she said loudly. "President Myers, my husband, struggles with his thoughts. He believes I have been unfaithful, but it's all in his mind. There's nothing wrong between me and Professor Baker. Please don't believe him. I ask that you remove him from this conversation." Myers glanced at her and replied calmly, "I might understand your point, Professor Maitland, but I saw the way you interacted with Professor Baker. No woman in her right mind would act like that unless there was an agreement with her husband, which seems to be missing." He looked at Doug and shook his head. "Professor Baker, I'm disappointed. I thought you would be a valuable part of our team. Regardless of what happened, you should have known to avoid any appearance of wrongdoing. Clearly, that was not the case, and I will have to reconsider your position at the university." I held back a laugh at the surprise on both their faces. Myers turned back to me. "Whatever happens moving forward, Mr. Maitland, you are in a delicate situation. If we tell someone about this, you might lose your job with the state attorney's office. You could also be barred from practicing law. Why shouldn't I just call the police?" "You're right. I could be fired and lose my license. But if that happens, I will take legal action against the university for the trouble it has caused in my marriage. I might not win, likely won't. But I'm a well-known prosecutor, and my wife and Professor Baker are respected in their fields. Plus, my wife attracts attention, and so does Professor Baker. When people hear about a messy situation and claims of wrongdoing in the university, I think UNF will get bad press. Not the kind of attention you want, not the kind that will help you get donations needed for the school's success." I paused, and we shared a silent moment, staring at one another. I saw a few security officers nearby, watching us carefully. Finally, Myers sighed and said, "You don't seem to care about winning the case, do you?" Before I could answer, he added, "What do you want? Professor Baker is new and doesn't have the job security that comes with time at the university. We might be able to find a way to help him leave. Your wife has more job security, but we could make it easier for her to look for work elsewhere." One of my biggest regrets is that I didn't have a camera to capture the looks on their faces. I shook my head. "I just want to leave here and get some help. I don't want anything to happen to either of them." Myers looked taken aback. "You really surprised me, Mr. Maitland. Why did you come here tonight and stir things up if you didn't want revenge?" I glanced at Debbie. Surprise and something I couldn't identify crossed her face. Doug looked like everything had crumbled around him. I had doubts about his future at UNF regardless of what I said. "My marriage is over. I get that. My wife doesn't love me anymore. That hurts, but it happens. I don't want to hurt her. We have 2 kids, and I want her to keep her job for their sake. No, I came here tonight because I wanted my wife to see that I'm not a complete fool, that she couldn't just leave dressed for a night out and tell me she was at a boring meeting where spouses weren't allowed. As for Professor Baker, I wanted to share my feelings. I don't blame him too much. He made a poor choice getting involved with someone who's married, but I would probably be attracted to my wife anyway. She's a wonderful person. I didn't want to ruin his life. I just wanted him to understand how I felt about what was happening." He looked at me one last time and said, "You're an interesting man, Mr. Maitland. Please don't come back here again." And then he walked away. The crowd started to leave, and Debbie began to walk away with Doug Baker. She paused and came back to me. A serious look was on her face, and the spark in her eyes seemed to have faded to a cautious sadness. "Thank you, I guess, Bill. I have a job, but I'm not sure what my future holds. There's so much chaos, and for what? I'm not involved with anyone, and even if you think otherwise, Doug is just a friend." She took a deep breath, looked me in the eyes, and said, "Don't come back to the house tonight or any night, Bill. I'm considering getting a protective order for my peace and the children's. You've shown that you can lose your temper, and I worry about your stability. We need some space, Bill, a break from each other. I don't know what will happen to our marriage, but we need time apart before making any long-term decisions. You can arrange with the sheriff's office to collect anything you need." With that, she left with Doug, and I went back to the river. A week passed without a word from Debbie or the kids. I hadn't tried to reach out, and they hadn't contacted me, so we were equal. I had settled temporarily at the river condo, but I knew I needed to find a more permanent place. It was around noon on Friday, and the sailor's trial, who faced serious charges, was coming to an end. We expected a verdict soon, so the judge, Herman Herring, could leave for a new play at the theater. A younger ADA, Billy Parker, had made the opening-closing argument, and the defense attorney, Bob Becker, had given his final remarks. We were on a break until we would get our last chance with the jury. I grabbed a sub I ordered from the sandwich shop downstairs in the courthouse and tried to think strategically. Parker had done well in his closing. He summarized the case and clearly outlined the evidence against the sailor, Van Horn, giving the jury a solid understanding of our side. Since Becker had put Van Horn on the stand, we had one last chance to make an impact. I could let Parker give the final argument, but I was considering taking it myself for more emphasis. I needed a boost for my confidence. Cheryl peeked into my office and quietly said, "She's on the phone, Bill." "Perfect timing. Okay." I picked up the phone to connect her call. "Hi, Debbie." "Hello, Bill. What brings you to call me? Do you have another court order?" "No, Bill. Remember, we talked about taking a break until we could figure things out between us." "I remember. I'm going to file for divorce this afternoon." "Oh, well, thanks for letting me know." "Bill, I don't think I can keep going. I haven't been happy for a long time. And if you're honest, once everything settles down, I don't think you'll miss me much. You still have your job and your cases. That's what your life has been focused on for so long." "Very sharp. Good to know you care. How is Doug, by the way? Did he need surgery on his nose?" "No, Bill, he didn't. And it's not your concern. And I know you might think otherwise, but I'm not doing this for Doug. I'm doing it for me. I just don't feel the same about you anymore. I'm sorry." "That was all I needed to hear, Debbie. I'll get a lawyer and they can talk to yours. Good luck." I hung up on her. I sat there trying to understand my feelings. At least I wasn't feeling sick. It felt oddly unreal. Almost 20 years of my life came to an end in just 1 minute. It should have felt heavier, but it was just another day. I called Cheryl. When she came in, I told her, "Call Parker, I'm taking the case. Van Horn has an important meeting." I took a few bites of my sandwich, but I wasn't very hungry. I tossed the rest and grabbed my briefcase, heading to the door. Just then, Cheryl stepped in front of me. She pointed to my face, looking puzzled. "What? Is something wrong?" She held up a makeup mirror and opened it. I saw tears on my cheeks. I pulled out a handkerchief to clean my face. "Write down the date and time, Cheryl. Those are the last tears I'll shed for this situation." I walked towards the elevator and almost felt like smiling. For the first time, I felt a bit sorry for Van Horn. He was about to face a tough time, tied down and dealing with a big change in his life. A small part of the blame for what was coming rested with my ex-wife. As the elevator doors closed behind me, I stepped into my new life. Recap. My name is Bill Maitland. I'm one of the top assistant state attorneys in Jacksonville, Florida. As I mentioned before, the last 3 weeks have been very hard for me. I thought I was happily married to someone who loved me, but I was wrong. For 17 years, my wife, Debbie Bascom, was my partner and my closest friend. We have 2 kids who are both dealing with the ups and downs of being teenagers. I was busy with my job in law, while Debbie was doing well as an assistant professor at the University of North Florida. I thought we had a good marriage. I always felt lucky to be with Debbie since she was very attractive, while I considered myself more ordinary. But then, everything changed. During a talk about her summer plans, she casually mentioned that we had some nice moments when we were married. That comment made me realize things weren't as I thought. Her tone felt strange, different from what I had experienced in recent years, and it made me doubt our relationship. I foolishly shared my concerns, thinking it would help us understand each other better. From that point on, our communication broke down. I found out she was spending time with a younger colleague. When I saw some troubling emails on her computer, it became clear that our relationship was in serious trouble, and I made the tough decision to move out. I tried to reconnect with her, hoping to bring back our closeness, but it only led to silence as she lay upset on her side of the bed. That was when I knew it was over. I realized just how far apart we had grown when I surprised her at a university event. She seemed happy, but it felt like she was far away. After an in-person disagreement with one of her friends, I ended up with a restraining order that kept me from going home. Then, just moments ago, while I was getting ready to give my final arguments in a heartbreaking case about a young sailor who had tragically lost control, Debbie called me. She told me she no longer loved me and was planning to file for divorce. With that news, I walked into Circuit Judge Herman Herring's courtroom feeling a mix of anger and resolve. The case against Chris Van Horn wasn't just about the law. It felt very personal to me. Everything was set for the court proceedings. Judge Herring, who had a strong presence and was a former Marine, sat at the front. Next to him was Charlie Case, the bailiff who helped keep order in the often tense courtroom. Billy Parker, the assistant state attorney for this case, sat alone at the prosecution table. Next to Van Horn, who was dressed simply, sat Arnold Becker, the lawyer for the defense. As I entered the courtroom, I saw Van Horn's parents sitting quietly behind him, while his ex-wife and her family were on the other side. Van Horn's mother looked visibly upset. I caught Becker's eye, and he gave me a self-satisfied smile that made me curious about how confident he felt. "Mr. Maitland, what a nice surprise," Herring said. "What brings you here today?" "I'm just keeping up with things," I replied. "Are we ready to start, Your Honor?" "Let's get going." I glanced at the jury. They were a mixed group. There was an older man, 2 women in their 30s, a tired-looking young man, a businessman, and a well-dressed woman who seemed familiar but reserved. Among them, only the older man and 1 woman looked like they might have children. His life experience could shape how he saw things. I wondered if Becker had picked the jury to fit his plan. I looked back at Van Horn, who briefly met my gaze before looking away. He was facing serious trouble, but I couldn't imagine how he could bear another day with the memory of that small, lifeless child in his hands. I walked over to Parker and picked up my only needed item. Herring spoke to the jury, saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, Assistant State Attorney Maitland will give the closing statements for the state. Remember, you can only think about the facts and testimony presented. This closing is just a chance for the state to summarize what it believes are the important facts in this case for you to consider. Mr. Maitland." I walked slowly toward the jury, stopping in front of the foreman. I held my item where they couldn't see it. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is William Maitland. I work as an assistant state attorney. I have been with the attorney's office for 10 years. Before that, I was a defense lawyer for a few years. I stand here now to share some final thoughts before you go to discuss your decision." I let their eyes rest on me, some curious, others already weary of their duty and wanting to return to their lives. I won't go over the case again. I recognize that Mr. Becker tried hard to raise doubts by suggesting that Mrs. Van Horn had a new partner after their divorce and that this man harmed little Amber Van Horn. I believe you listened carefully to the witnesses, police, medical experts, and others, and can judge their reliability compared to Mr. Van Horn's. Despite Mr. Becker's skills as a lawyer, I don't think he has really weakened the case we've built against his client. No, I won't repeat the case. I will keep my comments short and clear. I held up a picture measuring 8 by 12, showing a happy 7-month-old Amber Van Horn in her mother's arms. Becker sprang up from his chair, saying, "Your Honor." But before he could continue, I quickly said, "This is just a photo of the victim, Your Honor. Nothing wrong with it." Herring glanced at Becker, who wisely stayed quiet as Herring said, "Sit down." I walked towards the jury box, slowly showing the picture to the jurors. I paused in front of a young man. He tried not to look closely, but he couldn't help himself. They hadn't seen a picture of the little girl since the trial began. It had only been talk and diagrams, not an actual person. "I'm sorry for what I'm doing, everyone. I'm doing this to reach out to each of you. Remember why we are here. Amber Van Horn was a living baby just a short time ago. Now she rests in a cemetery in Jacksonville." A gasp rippled through the audience, followed by whispers. I noticed Becker getting up again and sitting down with just a look from Herring. "I apologize for my words, but it's true. She is gone and has been buried. She was just a little girl. Many little girls lose their lives every year here due to sickness, accidents, and other sad events, but only one little girl matters here." I walked along the row, looking each juror in the eye until they looked away. "She is the reason we are here. She is why the state and defense have spent a lot on this case, considering all the resources spent on this little girl's death. Why do we do this? Why do we invest so much in one life? I held the photo up again for them to see. Because in our society, every life is important. Amber Van Horn hadn't done much in her short life. She didn't write stories or raise kids, but she had value just because she lived. She was young, unformed, and meant a lot to those who loved her. Yet we hold this trial to prove that her life mattered, and the state asks you to show her father, Chris Van Horn, that life is precious. I turned away from the jury and approached Van Horn's table. I did not look back as I said, I apologized before for bringing this up, and I know some of you didn't fully understand my point. Let me explain. I started as a prosecutor 10 years ago. I thought it would just be a job. But I didn't realize it was much more than that. I have worked on many cases. I have met the families of many victims. I thought when a case was done, I could move on. I turned and walked back to the jury box. I was wrong. I still remember the face of the first victim in my first case. Lily Mae Longstreet was a clerk who lost her life during a robbery. She was married and had 2 young boys. Sometimes when I fall asleep or dream, I see her face. I lost that case. We couldn't prove enough to convict the person accused of her death. But I tried my best. When I see Lily Mae in my dreams, I feel like I have no regrets. Now, I've planted Amber's memory in your minds. Trust me, someday, somewhere, you will remember her. For me, the final decision isn't as heavy as knowing that I and my office did everything we could for Amber. Even if Mr. Van Horn is found not guilty, I can still hold my head high knowing I did all I could. It is up to you 6 to decide what you owe this little girl. When you see her again, and you will, can you tell yourself you did what was right for her? I hope you can, or you might have many sleepless nights. Thank you for listening. Amber and her loved ones thank you too. Becker gave me a tired smile, as if he couldn't believe I tried to share that view with the jury. I just smiled back. I smiled at him again at 6 p.m. after they called us back to the courtroom. The jury had been out for a little more than 4 hours. The foreman stood and told Van Horn they had found him guilty of second-degree murder. That meant he could get a sentence of 10 to 25 years. For a first-time offense, it would probably be 10 years. Becker was trying to smile for Amber's parents. He'd likely mentioned that he saved their son from a harsher punishment. But I wondered what kind of person the young man would be when he got out after 10 years. He wouldn't be the same. Amber's mother and her grandmother came up and hugged me. I'm not one for hugs, but I returned the embrace. They might not have gotten everything they hoped for, but I thought they could move forward. They could continue with their lives. As I was leaving, Becker came up and tapped my shoulder. He had nice hair, a bright smile, and looked fit. He reminded me of Debbie's boyfriend. I wanted to show my frustration, but instead, I managed a weak smile. "Congratulations," he said. If he wasn't sincere, he did a good job pretending. I didn't think that would work, but I expected a lesser charge. Do you want to grab some coffee or a drink? I almost turned him down, but then I realized I had nowhere to go that night. So we ended up at Pelican's, a downtown bar that gets busy in the evenings unless you're heading to the beaches or the suburbs. He was buying the drinks, and since he probably earned a lot more than I did, I went along with it. I was mixing a spicy drink while he chose something lighter. "Are you curious why I asked you out for a drink?" he asked. "Not really. I think you want to hear my thoughts on your work." He smiled and replied in a way. I shook my head. "You might be let down." He chuckled, took a sip, then put it down and looked at me intently. I began to wonder if I had misunderstood his purpose. "I do want to work together, but not in the way you think, Bill. My law firm is always searching for new talent. We have offices in many big cities across the U.S., nearly 50 partners, and about 500 attorneys. Have you ever thought about switching to our side? I heard you used to work in defense." "I'm grateful, but why?" "I can't really explain it. It's just a feeling I got when I saw you. I believe you're worth much more than this place offers. Jacksonville? You could be in New York, San Francisco, or Chicago. There are bigger cases, bigger money, and more chances. You wouldn't believe how many opportunities come through our doors. It's easy to make connections." He noticed the ring on my left hand. "Looks like you're married, so we could find a job for your spouse, too. And even married guys have great opportunities. Does that pique your interest?" I took a sip of my drink and considered his offer. No, not really. He seemed truly confused. I like what I do. I feel connected to my work. Taking on wealthy clients or handling divorces just doesn't appeal to me. It could be a challenge, but I'm pretty set in my ways. I've put too much into my current path to just walk away. He raised an eyebrow, a look I'd only seen in movies. I showed him my wedding ring. The skin around it was still a bit pink, but mostly healed. My wife called me 20 minutes before I entered the courtroom to say she didn't love me anymore and was going to file for divorce. After almost 18 years and 2 kids. Ouch! My job played a big part in it. I made some mistakes too, but I chose the path I took, so I can't complain too much. But doesn't that free you up? I mean, as wonderful as she may have been, you know there's a whole world out there. You may not want to think about it now, but life goes on. Maybe. Right now, I just want to focus on getting through this. Leave me your card. If I change my mind, I'll reach out, but it won't be soon. He looked around the bar. Like usual, there were many younger and older attorneys, courthouse staff, secretaries, both men and women, socializing and networking for future opportunities. I was younger than some of them, but I felt much older. Was this really going to be my future? Becker shook my hand before moving on to a tall woman with red hair from the public defender's office. As I left, I could hear him say something that made her laugh. I headed back to my condo and let myself in. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, but I found a pack of cheese crackers and a half-empty Pepsi on the desk by the bed. I finished both. I lay back on the bed, fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling. I wished I was at home with Debbie, relaxing in our bedroom. I wanted to hear the kids' music, watch television, or just talk with her about our day. Instead, I was lying in a strange bed, alone, with only the soft sounds of cars passing outside and distant sirens breaking the silence. Being away from the courthouse and my work, the reality was starting to hit me. I was alone, and this loneliness felt like it would be my new normal. As I lay there, a wave of frustration built inside me. I had never denied my part in what went wrong between Debbie and me. I had allowed my care for others to push her and the kids aside. I knew it was a mistake, but I had never looked at another woman with the intent to betray my wife. My love for her was still real, and if I had faced her struggles, I would have talked to her and tried to fix things. During her pregnancies, Debbie faced difficulties, and it took time for her to feel like herself again afterward. I could never forget that she was still the woman I love, even with those changes. Why couldn't she see that in me? I sat up in bed wanting to voice my frustration. I had made mistakes, but I wasn't the one who betrayed my partner. I hadn't thrown away nearly 20 years for someone new. I didn't need to read her messages to Lance. I could remember every word. While I was working hard to love her and hold our marriage together, she was flirting and eventually falling for someone who hadn't been there for her. Lance hadn't been around during her tough nights or when we were worried about our newborn. Those were times filled with uncertainty and tears, thinking about a different future. With his youthful charm, Lance pulled her away from the life we had built together, making her forget the years and memories we shared. I thought I had felt anger before, but this was different. Until she said she didn't love me anymore, I had held on to hope. Now that hope was gone. I had seen times when betrayed partners reacted strongly. I had never really thought about it like this before. Lance was feeling a mix of emotions, mostly because he was frustrated and regretful. If I were his age and without a partner, maybe I would have ended up in similar situations. But Debbie had hurt me deeply, leaving me feeling exposed and betrayed. The idea of seeing her soon was scary. Feeling restless, I chose to leave my home and found myself at the Last Call, a bar near my old neighborhood. I sat alone watching couples of all ages share happy moments, laughing and chatting. I drank until I felt overwhelmed, and soon the bar owner called for help. After a short talk, the officers recognized me and took me back to my condo, where I gratefully fell into a deep sleep. That was the end of my first day of being free. The next day, I could have gone home with a deputy, but I wasn't ready to see Debbie or my kids. I spent Saturday flipping through channels on TV before having dinner at a new Thai place near the beach. Later, I found comfort on a bench at the Riverwalk, enjoying the cool breeze as the sun set and rain lingered in the air. My phone rang, and I looked at the screen. I was ready to ignore it if it was Debbie. "Hi, Roy." To my surprise, it was Kathy, Debbie's mother. Roy was okay, but Kathy had that caring vibe of a classic grandmother, and she looked great for 65. "Hello, Bill. Are you all right?" she asked, sounding worried. "Define okay," I replied. "I'm really sorry, Bill. I want you to know I tried to change Debbie's mind when I found out. I told her she was being foolish. She's my daughter, and I love her, but I can't believe this is happening." "I find it hard to believe, too, Kathy, but things happen. She did file on Friday, didn't she?" "Yes, I'm sorry, but she did." "What's your plan?" "About what?" "You're going to fight it, right? You're a lawyer, you know people. Drag it out as long as you can." "Why would I do that?" "Why? Because you love her, don't you? And the kids." "Yes, the kids, Debbie maybe. But my feelings have changed over these past few weeks." A long silence followed before she spoke again. "You know she doesn't really have feelings for the other man, right?" I pretended not to understand. "What other man?" "Oh, Bill, don't be naive. Doug Baker, the one from UNF. "How do you know about him?" "He's been around since the situation at UNF happened, and she had dinner with him last night. As friends." "Do you think there's more between them?" Kathy didn't sound defensive, which made me think she might suspect something. "I don't know, Bill. Probably, honestly. You can watch her talk about how good friends they are and see she's not being completely honest. I just don't know if she's tricking herself as well as everyone else." I took a deep breath and let it out. The first few drops of rain hit my face. "Well, Kathy, what's the point? Why should I fight when she seems to have moved on?" "Because she might think she loves him, but deep down she doesn't. She built a life with you, and you both have kids together. She genuinely cared for you, but time changes things. When she found someone new, it became tempting. This can happen in long-term relationships. Sometimes we forget what really matters." "I guess what I mean is that this probably won't last. She might believe she loves him or enjoy the attention from someone younger, and while it hurts me to say it, she might have moments with him that feel special. So, what's the use of me trying to hold on to someone who believes she loves someone else? Because these brief connections often fade away. It's not real love. It's a fantasy that disappears over time. Eventually, she might remember what you two shared. When that happens, those memories could be more important than her current choices." As the rain started to fall more heavily, I stood up from the bench and walked towards my car. "Maybe, but I don't want to wait for that." There was a pause. Reaching my car in the parking lot, she finally said, "You don't love her enough to wait. Kathy, what if Roy came to you one day and told you he found someone new and wanted to leave? Would you wait for him?" I got into my car and watched the rain glide down the windshield. I could tell she was upset. "I'm going to miss you, Bill. You've been a good person, a good family member, and a decent parent, even if you could have spent more time with the kids. I feel sad for myself and for Debbie. One day she will understand what she gave up, and she might regret it. I won't lie. That thought does bring me some comfort. I hope she realizes her mistake someday, because I'm hurting now. Remember us, Bill. Even if you step away from Debbie's life, you've been part of ours for 20 years. You're not leaving us completely." "I know. Goodbye." I drove to my new place by the river, plugged in my laptop, and started looking at rentals. Money wasn't really a problem, but I wanted to find a place closer to downtown. I had a feeling my job would become even more important than before, and being downtown would be more convenient. After I noted some interesting options, I didn't want to hear more bad news about how everything was falling apart and how my family had moved on without me. I searched for distractions online, but they didn't really help. It was clear my situation affected me more than I realized. As I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, memories from my past life came back to me. I couldn't tell how long it took for me to fall asleep or when I woke up to the morning light. The fourth day of my freedom. When I arrived at work that day, it felt like everyone was watching me while trying to act normal. Cheryl was especially careful around me. I had to encourage her to put the past aside and concentrate on our tasks. I think I did okay at my job, even if I couldn't remember all the details. I reached out to some real estate agents and set up meetings to look at a few places. I finished my day around 4:30 and had seen 5 properties by 7:30 that evening. After stepping out of a 2-bedroom condo just 2 miles from the courthouse on Liberty Street, I told the agent, "This is the one." He looked a bit taken aback. "You don't want to see any other places? It's a little small." "It's big enough for me. I won't be here much. The kitchen is small, but I plan to eat out a lot. It has internet and satellite TV, and the second bedroom will be for when my kids come to visit. I can sleep on the couch sometimes. I want to move in by this weekend. Can we do that?" With the right amount of money, anything is possible. The week flew by and also felt slow. I got settled in the 2-bedroom on Liberty. Work became routine, but the Thompson brothers case, which I thought would be easy, turned out to be tricky. The brothers and their friends had influenced the jury and made some unfair threats to get the result they wanted. What should have been a simple legal problem turned into a long fight. Instead of 3 or 4 days, it took almost 3 weeks before we got to the final arguments. I eventually went back to my old home with a deputy. Debbie found a reason to be away, so it was just Kelly there. While I thought about my life, she stood close by, and we shared a few words. As I was about to go, I walked over to her and gave her a hug. She paused for a moment before hugging me back. "I'm sorry, sweetie." "I'm sorry too, Daddy." I turned the 2-bedroom condo into a storage space, leaving just enough room to eat in the kitchen and sleep. Each night I went out, just like I had been doing since my visit to the last call, and spent time at a bar. As always, the owners called the police, who helped bring me home. I knew they were getting a bit annoyed, but as long as I held on to some leverage about a deputy's past, they treated me fairly. On Thursday, I focused on getting ready for the Thompson case. At work, people were getting used to my troubles with the divorce, but they still approached me carefully. I noticed that not many people talked about my personal life. Maybe they were trying to be kind, or perhaps I gave off a clear signal that I wanted to be by myself. After work, around 8 p.m., I picked up some Chinese food on my way home. I worked on my cases until almost midnight without turning on the TV. Finally, I checked my email. Most messages were unimportant, except for one from Debbie. "Bill, I've hired Joyce Linder from Linder & Howe to manage the divorce. Have whoever you choose contact her." There were no friendly emojis or warm messages in her email, which didn't surprise me. I could have waited until the next day, but the message pushed me to act. I found a phone number and called. "Yes, this better be very important to be calling me at midnight. Otherwise my fees are doubling," came the voice on the other end. I knew Lou Walters had caller ID and recognized my number, so he was just joking. "I expect you to work for free, or I'll tell Mona about those 2 people you spent time with at that law school event years ago. Mutual assured destruction, Mr. Assistant State Attorney. You reveal my secrets, and I'll remind Debbie about that conference from 2 years ago. You know, the one with the woman who was quite remarkable?" He clearly hadn't been updated on recent events. I wondered why his wife Mona hadn't told him. Then I remembered she was away in Africa with a group focused on wildlife. It wouldn't make a difference now, even if it were true, Lou. "Oh, what's happening, Bill?" "She filed for divorce a couple of weeks ago and has hired Joyce Linder. I need you to represent me." There was a pause on the line, which was rare because Lou usually talked a lot. I had liked him since we first met over 5 years ago when I spoke to law students at UF. He typically didn't work on divorce cases, but he was a skilled lawyer and a trustworthy friend. "You're serious? I'm sorry to hear that. What happened? Were there problems in your marriage?" "It's a bit different than that." "No. Really? I never would have guessed. Please tell me it wasn't Norman," he asked, naming his partner who had a certain reputation. He didn't. "No, it wasn't Norman. She met a new professor at UNF and now thinks she's in love with him." "Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I don't like this situation for you, but if it had been Norman, I would have been very upset. So what do you want to do? Should we take it slow and give her a chance to change her mind?" "No, it's over. When your spouse says she doesn't love you anymore and introduces someone new to your kids and family, it's too late. I just want you to set up fair child support. She has a good job, and I'll do my part. But I will not pay any form of alimony. I won't support her while she's with someone else. We've been married for 17 years, but I don't think she deserves anything for her choices. Can you help me with this? Can a bear live in the woods? How tough do you want me to be? I know cheating isn't a crime, but I can find a judge who cares about this topic, and we can address it as needed. What do you have on her?" I can't share that, Lou, and please don't press me. I'm not even sure what has happened yet. I know she believes she's in love with someone else, and if she hasn't made that leap yet, it's likely to happen soon. You know you're tying my hands, but I'll help you. Bill, I truly apologize for all this. Can Mona or I do anything for you? I'm in Omaha right now, but I'll be back in Jacksonville in a few days. Just take care of this legal issue. Please give my best to Mona when you see her. You're a lucky man. I only realized how lucky lately. Oh, and what about the kids? Do you have any specific requests for time with them? Are you thinking about custody? No, she's a good mother, just not the best partner. She's mainly raised them. I've been visiting. I want some stable time with them that she can't change, but I'm okay with her having primary custody. Consider it done. But don't let this situation hurt your relationship with the kids. Even if things get tricky, and they often do, they are still your kids. No matter what happens between you and Debbie, keep that bond strong. I'll call you when I return to Jacksonville, okay? I knew how hard he and his wife Mona were trying to start a family. They couldn't hide their envy and sadness when they saw our two lively teenagers on their visits, but everyone faces their own struggles. At that moment, I felt like I'd trade my problems for theirs. I lay back, feeling a mix of relief and weight on my shoulders. Lou was capable. He would handle the legal side well. The weight came from knowing that with lawyers involved, there was no turning back. The next morning, I walked into work and felt the looks and whispers as I prepared for the end of the first case for the Thompson brothers. This one was about Nigel. The trial felt simple, aside from some unexpected surprises with witnesses and jury tampering. I wasn't proud of it, but I took the case from Gordon Carlisle and Jessica Stevens because I needed the work. I delivered my closing statement, making a strong case against Thompson, and an hour later, I wasn't surprised when the jury announced a guilty verdict. I kept Stevens at the prosecution table because she had managed the process well when I took over the case. She was a tall blonde, and her looks could change from plain to very attractive depending on the angle. She had worked at the state attorney's office before I arrived and was well regarded there. I never quite understood why she chose to stay in a lesser role. Right now, her lively appearance was replaced with a serious look. I didn't need special skills to see that she was upset. I recognized that look well. Carlisle didn't take it well when I took on the case. Even though he tried to hide his feelings, I could sense his annoyance. It was a big opportunity that could have helped him in his career, but he was still young. There would be other chances for him. As I left the courtroom, I saw Carlisle talking quietly with two younger assistants. I walked over slowly. It was my case. Jessica was just there to represent me. I did all the real work, and then he swoops in and takes it away. If he paid more attention to his own life, maybe he wouldn't be making things hard for everyone else. The two assistants looked at me as I got closer, and Carlisle turned my way. He was silent, likely preparing for an argument. First off, you should apologize for speaking about my wife like that. He looked at me and said, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I was just frustrated. I worked hard on that case. Secondly, anyone who thinks it's smart to insult someone higher up, especially where they can hear it, will likely struggle to get promoted. He stayed quiet, so I continued. What makes you think you know anything about my marriage, and how many others here are in on it? He looked uncomfortable. I've heard that your wife is with someone else. Everyone's been talking. Attorneys, the cleaning staff, it's all over. I shook my head, feeling let down. You're mistaken, but luckily being wrong isn't the end. Now please leave me alone. I watched them walk away, wondering how many stories about me and Debbie were being told. Someone cleared their throat behind me. I turned to see Jessica Stevens looking at me. He's out of line, Mr. Maitland. People know what really happened, and they respect you. They're not laughing at you. She was almost as tall as Debbie. I looked into her eyes and shrugged. They might be, Jessica, but that doesn't matter. As I turned to leave, she asked, Do you have any plans after work? I paused, surprised. Did a breakup make someone seem more interesting? After a moment, I replied, No, I don't have anything in mind. I feel down, and I think you do too. Would you like to get a drink before heading home? We could share our feelings. She came to my office just before I closed for the day at 6 p.m. Cheryl was there and gave me a curious look when Jessica walked in. I live on the west side near. Have you ever been to O'Brien's? I had. It was a big, old-fashioned bar located at the edge of downtown Avondale and the bustling West Side. Is this where you want to go? I asked. I live just 2 blocks away. I can park at home and walk to the bar, she replied. No need to worry about getting a ticket. That makes sense. I'll see you there. Around 7 p.m., I arrived at O'Brien's. This large bar sat just off US 17, a road that runs along the east coast of the U.S. and through Jacksonville. I parked and walked into O'Brien's. Inside, there was a big horseshoe bar, a spacious dance floor, pool tables and chairs scattered around. It felt like a true neighborhood pub. I found a table and sat down. A waitress came to take my order, and I asked for a Bloody Mary with quite a bit of vodka and spices. Just as I was about to pay, a guy about my height with dark hair and a slight limp approached us. He had the look of a fighter. "Mr. Maitland's money isn't needed here," he told the waitress. "Hi, O'Brien," I said. "Glad to see you're doing well." "As well as I can be. What brings you here, Mr. M?" "Just stopping by for a drink, meeting someone." He raised an eyebrow. "Business or fun? Just a friend. Not out with your wife?" "Not anymore, O'Brien. We're done." "Oh, sorry to hear that. How long has it been?" 2 weeks. He shook his head and said, "It'll get easier, Mr. M. I've been through that 4 times. Spend time with friends. It helps." "You have a wise spirit, my friend," I replied to O'Brien, the former fighter who I had once declined to take legal action against years ago. As we chatted, Jessica walked over. She still wore her work clothes, but her long blonde hair flowed down, making her look younger. She ordered a Jack Daniel's neat. I thought that showed strength, while O'Brien nodded in approval. We sat quietly, sharing drinks and looking at each other. I noticed tears in her eyes, a side of her I had never seen in all our years of friendship. "What's going on, Jess? You know I've shared my troubles," I encouraged her. "It's just about love, Bill. Why does it always bring sadness?" "I'm probably the last person you should be asking," I said. "You were married for 17 years and have 2 kids. I'm 44, never been married, and have no children. I've had meaningful relationships, but nothing close to what you had with your wife. Now, even if you've lost your family, you still had a life." I felt a heaviness in her words. "I've never had that," I admitted, searching for something uplifting to say, but darker thoughts crept in. "Come on, Jessica. You're still young at 44. I've never really taken the time to say this, but I think you're a wonderful woman. You could still find someone special." She finished her drink and tears started to fall. "No, Mr. Bill. There has only been one man who truly loved me, and I loved him too. He asked me to marry him, and I said no. Now he's gone, and he'll never return. I can't blame him." "I don't understand." "It's Carl Cameron. He's a reporter for the Times-Union." "I know him. You and Carl were a couple?" "For almost a year. We met last June when he was covering a story about a mayor's corruption case we were involved in. Her tears flowed more freely. "He asked you to marry him. I caught that much. And you said no? Why?" She explained, and I was left surprised. "Is that why you didn't marry him?" "I just couldn't. I know it might sound strange, but I couldn't. We shared so much, but I wasn't ready for marriage." "So you decided not to marry him, and that's why he left?" She nodded, and I shook my head, trying to hold back a smile. "I didn't think there were people like that left in the world. Seriously, I understand him. He wants a future and the security that comes with it. You're both at that point in life when that's important. But there has to be a way for both of you to find a middle ground." She just shook her head and cried harder. "I can't, and I don't want to be without him. What should I do?" She had moved her chair beside mine and rested her head on my shoulder. "I'm not the smartest guy, but I think you know what you need to do. You still have a chance to keep him. I've lost the only woman I ever cared for, and there's nothing I can do about it now." She looked up at me, her face wet with tears. "I don't want to be alone tonight, Bill. I think it would be really hard for me to sleep by myself. Can we go to your place? And I just need some company tonight. No pressure. Just stay with me, please." I thought about it for a moment. Even if I wasn't sure how I would feel, at least there would be someone with me. I didn't know if I could handle another night alone, thinking about everything I had lost. Then I gently shook my head. "No, it's a tempting offer. You have no idea how tempting it is." "But you know why you want to be near me. Because I admire you, Bill. You're honest and kind, and you stand up for what you believe in. You're a good man. I'd rather spend time with you than almost anyone else I know. Except for one person, and you seem hesitant to admit it. Come on, Jess. You don't need to think too hard to see what's happening. You're afraid to take a chance with Carl, so you're settling for me and feeling confused about it. I become your reason for not seeing what could happen with him. She looked at me for a moment, then gathered herself. So, you're not going to go after this? No, I'm going to stay here and have another drink. She got up to leave. You should reach out to him. If you really care, don't let it fade away. That happens too often. She didn't even look back. I can't. I watched her walk out of O'Brien's, realizing it should comfort me to know someone else had their own struggles, but it didn't help at all. 4 Bloody Marys didn't lift my mood, but I felt numb by the time I finished my 5th. Since I was still awake, I knew I needed a 6th. As I prepared to ask O'Brien for another, I noticed a police officer sitting down next to me. He was about 6 feet tall, with gray hair and a big mustache. He held out his hand, and I shook it automatically. Bob Hastings, Mr. Maitland. Sergeant Hastings, how are you? Fine. Just trying to forget my problems. Can you give me a ride home or help me get a cab when I can't walk anymore? Sorry, Mr. Maitland. O'Brien called me because he thought you might need help. We need to talk. About what? We can't keep coming to take you home every time you want to drink away your troubles. I know you're an important prosecutor, and the sheriff wants us to be easy on you, but you need to sort things out. I'm not. My team has better things to do than help someone whose life is challenges every time you want to forget your issues. I chuckled. Well, don't hold back, Sergeant. Just say it straight. He placed his badge on the table between us. No need for that kind of tension. Just making a point. I understand your situation, Mr. Maitland. You're in a new place because your partner left. You're alone for the first time in a long while, and I can see you're struggling with being by yourself. So you are going to keep going out and drinking to avoid facing the truth of being alone now. I went through something similar. I made choices that led to my separation 6 months ago. I almost lost myself in drinking, but deciding to change helped turn my life around. Don't follow that path. I knew that if I kept drinking, I'd miss work, make mistakes, and that would put my job at risk. If that happened, I wouldn't know how to deal with it. He looked at me closely. I see you. You remind me of myself. The only thing I truly love is my job, being a police officer. As long as I have that, I can keep going. If I lost it, I wouldn't want to continue. You're a prosecutor. That defines who you are. If you don't find a way to move forward, things won't go well for you. He put his badge away and stood up. I haven't met you before, but good people say you're a decent person. We could use more like you, find positive things to do in the evenings. Join a gym, volunteer, or help someone out. Just stay away from bars. Good night. Then he walked away. O'Brien came up and said, Your cab is waiting for you outside, Mr. M. If I were you, I would listen to Sergeant Hastings. Life may seem tough now, but give it some time. Things can get better. I woke up alone. I rolled over, picked up my phone, and called a number I knew well. If Debbie answered, I planned to hang up. But it was Bill Jr. who picked up. Hi. Hey. Did I wake you? No, I'm just getting ready to go out. Jesse Hillman from school invited me camping at Salt Springs. We're going to check it out. That sounds fun. I took you there when you were about 4 or 5 years old. You really enjoyed it. I don't remember much, but yeah, I think it will be a blast. When are you leaving? In about an hour. I'll be back Sunday night. Oh, have a great time. Is your sister with you? No. She went on a trip to Atlanta with Melody Barnes and her family. I stayed quiet for a moment, just listening to him breathe. I found it strange he didn't remember our trip to Salt Springs. It felt very clear in my mind. Do you want to talk to Mom? I heard her and Doug is there? Mom doesn't want us talking about her and Doug. I knew I probably shouldn't ask, but I couldn't hold back. He's staying over now? I can't, just sometimes. It's okay, BJ. You didn't have to say anything. Don't mention that I called. Just have a good time, and I know. Then he hung up. Hey, listeners! You can catch the upcoming parts of this story on my new channel, Vixen Cheating Tales. I'll be posting new stories regularly, so I'd love your support in helping the channel hit 1,000 subscribers.